Good morning, and can I welcome everybody to the second meeting of the Education and Culture Committee in 2014. Can I remind everyone present to switch off their mobile phones and any other electronic devices because they can interfere with the broadcasting system. Today we will continue our consideration of Stage 2 of the Children and Young People Scotland Bill. Once again, I welcome Aileen Campbell, Minister for Children and Young People, and her accompanying officials. Officials are, of course, not permitted to participate in the formal proceedings. We will not go beyond Part 11 of the bill today, and depending on the progress we make, I will conclude proceedings at a suitable point, and any amendments that we do not reach today will be dealt with at our next meeting on the 21st of January. Okay, can I begin today's proceedings by calling Amendment 337 in the name of Liam MacArthur in a group on its own. Liam MacArthur to move and to speak to Amendment 337.
Good morning. Minister, we'll come shortly to the substance of what we're looking for this bill to achieve in terms of early learning and childcare. But whatever we decide in that context, and I think we would all accept that this bill can only represent a first step towards achieving our ambitions, there is an opportunity, or indeed a need, for us to underscore the purpose of what we're seeking to achieve, ensuring it's outcome focused and focused on the needs of both the child and the family. We all recognise the positive benefits that access to good quality early learning and childcare in the crucial early years can deliver. These are wide-ranging and not limited to the aims set out in this amendment. Nevertheless, I think it is helpful and beyond simply the policy memorandum for these key aims to be identified in making clear the specific challenges we are, or at least should be, seeking to overcome in the measures being taken forward in Part 6 of this bill. As I say, we'll come on to the issue of the level of ambition we should be showing at this precise moment, particularly with respect to provision for children from the poorest backgrounds. But I hope agreement can be reached, at least on the key aims we are trying to meet, and I move Amendment 337 in my name.
Thank you very much. No other members have indicated they wish to speak at this stage, so can I call the Minister?
Thank you, Convener. Amendment 337 amends the early learning and childcare provisions to include specific reference to the aims of the provisions. And it is unusual to place such general text in a bill as it would have no practical effect. The one exception here is that we do set out in the bill what the aims of the Children's Services plans are. This is appropriate because it relates to the aims of a plan rather than the bill itself. The Scottish Government has made clear commitments throughout the consultation on the bill and since the bill was introduced that the provisions are a first step towards longer-term aims that meet the needs of all children, parents and families, leading to improved outcomes for children and supporting parents to work or study, a point recognised in Liam MacArthur's opening remarks. This staged approach will focus initially on those children from more disadvantaged backgrounds within the context of access to high-quality universal provision. We've demonstrated our commitment to expanding eligibility by announcing an increased entitlement to cover 2-year-olds and families seeking work from August this year, and a further expansion to those 2-year-olds who would meet the current criteria for free school meals from August next year. This will be funded through Barnett Consequentials confirmed in December last year. However, this still falls short of the transformation that we seek for all children and families in Scotland, further commitments for which have been set out in the Scottish Government's White Paper, Scotland's Future. In relation to the aims of early learning and childcare, the bill introduces a new, more integrated concept of care and learning, which will be defined in more detail in statutory and supporting guidance on what we mean by early learning and childcare. It is through that guidance that the Scottish Government will set out the bill provisions in the context of the wider and longer-term aims. These will emphasise the multiple benefits and evidence base for those anticipated benefits and improved outcomes for children and families. In summary, therefore, we don't support Amendment 337.
Thank you very much, Minister. Can I call Liam MacArthur to wind up and to indicate whether he wishes to press or withdraw his amendment?
Thank you, Convener. I've listened to what the Minister has to say, particularly in relation to the practical effect of the amendment. I think, nevertheless, there is a value in terms of having the aims of what we're seeking to achieve through this legislation more clearly set out beyond simply the policy memorandum, as I said in the introductory remarks. And on that basis, I'll be pressing Amendment 337.
Thank you very much. The question is that Amendment 337 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not all agreed, therefore there will be division. Can those members who wish to support Amendment 337 please indicate? Thank you. Those who are against 337 please show. The result of the vote on Amendment 337, there were 4 votes in favour and 5 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. The question is that Section 42 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I call Amendment 48 in the name of Liz Smith, grouped with Amendments 49 and 50? Liz Smith to move Amendment 48 and to speak to all amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. And can I move Amendment 48 in my name? The current situation of nursery provision, there are thousands of children who lose out simply because they are born in the wrong month. Those children born between September the 1st and the 29th of February receive fewer hours of nursery provision than those who are born in other months of the year, and therefore their parents are also at a financial disadvantage. The recent statistical evidence, which has comprehensively been published by Reform Scotland, has shown that this anomaly, which results from the Scottish Government's policy to fund nursery provision after the child turns 3, means that nursery provision can vary by up to 317 hours or by more than £1,000 within the cost of nursery partnership provision. A child born between March the 1st and the 31st of August is entitled to the 2 full years of nursery provision before beginning school, but a child born between September the 1st and the 31st of December will only get 18 months provision, and a child born between the 1st of January and the 28th of February receives just 15 months. The Scottish Conservatives believe this situation is grossly unfair and that it would be much better if nursery provision started at a fixed point in the year for all children. The Scottish Government's defence of the current situation seems to be that when a child starts nursery at the beginning of the first term following their 3rd birthday, that it makes the best use of the entitlement and takes proper account of the child's age and educational needs, with parents of younger children able to keep them in nursery and defer starting school if they feel that's best. I would ask the Scottish Government to consider the following points. Take a child born in late July and one born in late October, who will both start primary school at the same time. Where on earth can the logic be in arguing that the child born in late July is entitled to 6 months more of nursery education? Secondly, under the current arrangements, only children born in January or February can defer entry to primary school and therefore by definition be guaranteed an extra year's nursery provision. There is therefore further discrimination between those born in September-December period and those born in January-February. If there are to be arbitrary points of cut-off, that's fine, but surely we need to be sure that it treats all children equally and doesn't discriminate just because of their birthday date. At the moment, only 50% of children born in Scotland are entitled to 2 full years of nursery provision. Indeed, when it comes to those who are not deferred within the September to February, they would receive 400 hours less than the Scottish Government's 600-hour-a-year policy. Amendments 48, 49 and 50 are therefore designed to make the necessary changes so as to ensure that there is a level playing field. I believe these proposed changes have the support of the Labour and Liberal members and a wide cross-section of society, so I hope the Minister will now agree to change what is currently a highly discriminatory policy which causes many children to lose out and many parents to face a financial penalty just because of when their child was born.
Thank you very much. Can I call Liam MacArthur?
Like Liz Smith and I think other members, I raised this issue during stage 1 in terms of the potential discrepancies in the way in which some children would benefit from the additional early learning and childcare provision being introduced through the bill. I'm pleased Liz Smith has brought forward these amendments addressing this shortcoming, giving what appeared to be a cross-party consensus during the stage 1 debate on the need to tackle this issue, and I hope the Minister will agree to these sensible changes. Indeed, having lodged amendments last week to address not dissimilar anomalies regarding eligibility criteria for those entitled to aftercare, it would be passing strange for the Minister not to take the same approach in relation to eligibility criteria in this instance, and I reiterate my support for the amendments 48, 49, 50 in Liz Smith's name to create, as she said, a more level playing field. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I call Colin Beattie?
I suppose my concern with this is that there seems to be no funding available for this at the moment. The amendment doesn't indicate where funding is going to come from, and these changes are going to result in perhaps another 30,000 additional 2-year-olds entering the system. There's no capacity within the system at the moment for that. And I think everyone around this table would like to see further expansion in terms of early learning and childcare, as and when it can be done. And it would appear to me that at the moment, what the government's proposing is eminently sensible in terms of allowing for future expansion of this facility to the children. But at the moment, I think they've done probably the maximum they can. And certainly the bill allows for future flexibility to allow changes to come in at a later date. The proposal that's put forward, there'll be still a slight variation in the provision as to whether the child starts from their birthday or the term after their birthday. But I think the current system does make use of the entitlement, best use of the entitlement in relation to the kids' needs and age. So certainly I would certainly oppose these amendments.
Thank you very much. Can I call the Minister?
Thank you very much, Convener. As we've heard, amendments 48, 49, 50 would, through moving to a system of all children receiving 2 full years of funded early learning and childcare, result in a significant number of children taking up their entitlement, some from the age of 2.5. And while the Government absolutely accepts the need for building on the provisions within the bill, the priority at this stage must be to build on additional hours and flexibility into our high-quality universal provision, increasing the entitlement to around 16 hours a week, and as we expand to focus on our more vulnerable 2-year-olds. And as I've already said, we have demonstrated our commitment to do this through the increased coverage of more vulnerable 2-year-olds announced last week. These amendments are unnecessary, as any further expansion or changes to commencement dates for entitlement to early learning and childcare for 2- or 3-year-olds can be achieved through secondary legislation made under the bill. The bill makes a significant change to reconfiguring the system of early learning and childcare, and further expansion must be subject to adequate funding. All the research shows that preschool provision is only beneficial to young children, particularly those who are most disadvantaged, when it is of high quality. In terms of the start dates for 3-year-olds taking up the funded entitlement, local authorities can and do deliver provision beyond the minimum number of hours and minimum eligible children. A number of local authorities therefore already start children from their 3rd birthday or the month after their 3rd birthday, where they have the capacity to do so. The youngest children, those born in January or February, who may get less provision when they are 3, will continue to be entitled to an additional year after they are 4, where parents want this to make sure they benefit from early learning and childcare and are ready to start school. Now, as I've said, the commencement dates for entitlement to early learning and childcare will be set through secondary legislation, and the intention is to continue commencement for 3-year-olds from the first term after their 3rd birthday. Some slight variation will always remain whether children commence from the 3rd birthday or after the first term, but this system makes the best use, as I've already said and will reiterate again, of the entitlement in relation to children's age and needs. What I would suggest is that there are issues of capacity, and Colin Beattie suggested 30,000 additional 2-year-olds and the associated costs that go with that. So he's raised some very pertinent points that perhaps might be addressed in the sum up from Liz Smith. Again, though, I would reiterate, Convener, that this bill represents the first step in our ongoing journey towards transforming childcare, starting with those who need it most, and that's the most vulnerable 2-year-olds. And last week we indicated our intention to expand that further. So, Convener, I don't support the amendments in this group.
Thank you very much. Can I call Liz Smith to wind up and to indicate whether she wishes to press or withdraw her amendment?
Thank you, Convener. Minister, I listened very carefully to what you said just now, which effectively repeats the comments that the Scottish Government has made before, that your policy at the current time makes the best use of the entitlement. That's all very well for the children who are able to receive that entitlement, but it's not all very well for those who are effectively discriminated against because of their birthday. I note what you're saying about the cost. Yes, of course there is a cost. That is a choice of priorities, and I do not accept that it is a situation that can be allowed to continue where there is blatant discrimination against quite a large number of children. If that cost has to be met, it will and it should be met. I don't think, in the context of all the other government announcements recently, I think it would be very hard for a Scottish Government minister to defend the existing policy based on all the other commitments that you have made about the absolute essential nature of ensuring that we look after our youngest children. So I'm afraid I do not accept your response, Minister, and I will certainly be pressing Amendment 48.
Thank you very much. The question is that Amendment 48 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Can those members who wish to support Amendment 48 please indicate? Thank you. Those opposed? The result of the vote on Amendment 48, 4 votes in favour, 5 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 84 in the name of Neil Bibby, grouped with Amendments 338, 85, 86, 339 and 340. Neil Bibby to move Amendment 84 and to speak to all other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. I'm pleased to move Amendment 84 and speak to my other amendments 85 and 86, which seek to increase and guarantee the number of 2-year-old children in Scotland eligible for early learning and childcare. However, I must say I am very disappointed. It would appear that the Minister, from her letter to the committee last week, has already ruled out SNP government support for increasing and guaranteeing the number of 2-year-olds eligible for childcare on the face of the bill. We all know the importance of providing quality childcare. It helps the child's learning and development. It helps put money in the pockets of families targeted at the poorest. It helps to reduce child poverty, and it's good for the economy more generally. All parties represented here on the committee have said that we need to provide more childcare, particularly for 2-year-olds. However, at present, the number of 2-year-olds in Scotland to be guaranteed free nursery on the face of the bill will just be 3%. It states that looked after 2-year-olds and those who have obtained a kinship care order will be eligible for free nursery. I've said since the bill, before the bill was published, that this was unambitious and risked being a missed opportunity. Opposition parties have rightly said that we can and should go much further. And I would say that again, in spite of the Scottish Government's partial U-turn last week, and it was a U-turn given the Minister's comments on the 8th of October 2013 when she said, "I'm not prepared to announce something that we cannot deliver on later." I would say again, firstly because the Scottish Government have not gone far enough in backing what Labour has proposed by giving half of Scotland's 2-year-olds childcare now. And secondly, because as of September this year, 40% of 2-year-olds in England will receive nursery and childcare, and only 15% in Scotland. When this goes up to 27% the following year in Scotland, the SNP government will still be lagging behind the Conservatives and Lib Dem coalition on childcare. Amendment 85, as members know, would entitle half of Scotland's 2-year-olds to 600 hours of childcare a year, using receipt of working tax credit and child tax credits as criteria. This would benefit 30,000 children, saving their families over £2,000 a year in childcare costs. This figure is calculated using the same method the Scottish Government uses for its claims. This would be real action to help with the cost of living and help take children out of poverty. This policy is also identical to the first stage of the plans written in the White Paper from the Scottish Government. Given there are resources and powers to deliver on childcare now, as proved by the First Minister last week, it is a question of political will, and therefore, given it is in the White Paper, I would expect SNP members to support Amendment 85, as it appeared to be SNP government policy some 6 or 7 weeks ago. Members should also support Amendment 86, which would guarantee childcare for the poorest 2-year-olds, as the Minister said. The amendment about extending childcare to 2-year-olds, those who would otherwise be in receipt of free school meals. Amendment 86 would do this and would mean approximately 27% of the poorest and most vulnerable 2-year-olds receiving early learning childcare. And this, of course, was the SNP policy of last week. I'm pleased that my amendments are supported by a significant number of children's charities and others who have reaffirmed their support this week. Helping children in poverty should be a priority, and given this appeared to be the new SNP policy on childcare last week, I would expect members, as a minimum, to support Amendment 86. In addition, I welcome Amendments 338, 339 and 340 in the name of Liam MacArthur. We have proposed different criteria, but the one thing that is consistent is the bill needs to go much further in providing nursery and guaranteeing nursery for childcare for 2-year-olds. And I'm happy to support the amendments in Liam MacArthur's name. It is worth stating that, again, that even after the Scottish Government's partial U-turn of last week, as of September this year, 40% of English 2-year-olds receive childcare, but only 15% of Scotland will receive the same, and the Scottish Government will still be lagging behind England on childcare, even when it goes to 27%. I would ask the Minister, when she responds, if she could state whether she thinks this is satisfactory. Can the Minister also explain why Scottish 2-year-olds will still not have the same access to nursery as English 2-year-olds? Is the Minister happy with that? I think parents will agree with me that it is not satisfactory. It's also worth stating that by voting against these amendments, SNP members will be voting against their own White Paper policy and the policy change announced last week. There seems to be a real reluctance to put additional childcare entitlements to 2-year-olds on the face of the bill. The obvious question is why. The original childcare entitlements to 3% of 2-year-olds was on the face of the bill, so why not go further in adding additional entitlements? Why will the Government not support its own policy in the bill and put its stated childcare commitments on the face of it? If the Minister refuses, would she therefore confirm that, as it stands, other than looked after 2-year-olds, there will be no commitments to childcare on the face of the bill? My Labour colleagues and I have said this risks being a missed opportunity, but in reality this is fast becoming the childcare bill with next to no childcare commitments written in it.
I call Liam MacArthur to speak to Amendment 338 and other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. What a difference a week makes. I know we were unable to deal with Part 6 last week for perfectly understandable reasons, but this leaves us wondering what might have been. Would the Minister have been granted licence to preempt the First Minister's announcement later in the day regarding the extension of early learning and childcare provision for 2-year-olds, or would Mr Salmon have required her to block opposition amendments in this grouping aimed at doing just that in order to keep his powder dry? Whatever the case, let me reiterate the welcome given by my colleague Willie Rennie for the substance of what was announced last Tuesday afternoon. While the 27% of 2-year-olds who stand to benefit from this extension and provision by the summer of next year does, as Neil Bibby explained, fall short of the 40% covered south of the border, by any measure, it is a major advance on what was originally proposed by the Scottish Government in the context of this bill. It will bring real benefits to some of the most disadvantaged 2-year-olds from this year onwards, and I congratulate the Minister on that change of position. Colleagues will recall that this has been a priority for Scottish Liberal Democrats over successive budgets. It reflects our belief that, welcome though the plans are for 3- and 4-year-olds, it is the investment before the age of 3 that can make the most significant difference in closing gaps in cognitive development, social skills, etc., and ultimately in attainment and outcomes later in life. This was the evidence we received from Save the Children, amongst others. It is the well-established empirical findings of Nobel laureate Professor James Heckman, and if these gaps are not closed at this stage, it is difficult, if not impossible, to do so subsequently. And that is why my colleague Willie Rennie has been pressing the First Minister on this week after week. Initially, these calls were rejected on the basis of policy differences between the Scottish Liberal Democrats and the Government. More recently, the argument from SNP ministers was that to deliver ambitious plans for early learning and childcare for 2-year-olds, we first needed the powers of independence. Given that this is an entirely devolved area, that position was never credible, and last week's announcement thankfully put that to rest. Not surprisingly, I'm still keen to see the Government go further, to be more ambitious in this bill. Moreover, the delays in reaching this position have had the unfortunate consequences, Neil Bibby said earlier, of limiting the scope for us to properly scrutinise the Government's proposals for 2-year-olds, which we're told will only come forward now as secondary legislation and not be on the face of the bill. In that context, I think the amendments in this grouping are very valuable. Indeed, they perhaps offer an opportunity to keep the Government honest as well as press for greater ambition yet. So I support Neil Bibby's amendments, albeit that they go further than the 40% of 2-year-olds we have proposed up until now. Ultimately, this is where we should be heading. Of course, this may only be achievable in stages, and my amendments look at ways in which eligibility criteria might be extended, although free school meals and tax credits would seem to be the logical place to start. Amendment 338 links eligibility to DLA, reflecting also the additional and specialist needs that this group of 2-year-olds may have. Access to quality early learning and or childcare in this instance would seem to be hugely beneficial in laying the foundation for improved outcomes later in life. Amendment 339 widens the criteria to include those identified as having additional support needs, and again, this could make a dramatic difference in terms of later outcomes, and also seems to chime with the approach taken in the ASL Act from 2009. Finally, Amendment 240 would tie eligibility to those whose parents are in receipt of state pension credit. While the previous two categories will only be covered south of the border from September 2014, this group already benefit from what has been put in place by the Coalition Government. I think this amendment also picks up a slight deficiency in Neil Bibby's proposals, which would appear to exclude this group of 2-year-olds on the basis of the age of their parents and guardians. I think Neil Bibby would perhaps accept that. So, Convener, again, I welcome the progress that has been made on this issue over the course of the last week. The new year appears to have ushered in a new willingness on the part of the Government to listen, but I would urge the Minister to go further and to support an even greater level of ambition for 2-year-olds from the most disadvantaged backgrounds. I'll be moving amendments in my name.
Okay. Thank you very much. I've got a number of members who wish to speak, so can I begin by calling Claire Adamson?
Thank Thank you, Convener. If I could speak to amendments 84, 85 and 86. This bill has always been a starting point to the ambitions of the Scottish Government, and I'm sure all the members around this table agree, as Neil Bibby has said, how important expanding childcare is. But what's also been at the core of what this Government has done is that these changes should be affordable, costed, phased and delivered in a sustainable way. And I think the developments last week, where we saw, as Neil Bibby had said, an original 3% of 2-year-olds having access. By August this year, 15% of all 2-year-olds will have access to expanded childcare. And the childcare provision will also be extended by August 2015 to reach 27% of 2-year-olds with the changes that the Government has made last week. And what we know is this is phased, it's costed, it's planned for, and the investment into training of childcare specialists, I think, was welcome last week too. So I think what we're seeing is that this, what the Government is proposing is absolutely the right way to go ahead, because we can talk about the numbers down south, but 40%, we have seen reports of the quality, and this Government will not compromise on the quality of that childcare provision, including staff ratios in that mix. So I think that these amendments are not required. At the moment, the bill is a starting point, and what we've seen is that the Government will continue to expand when it is reasonable and costed to do so. But can I also comment on, Mr Bibby made a comment in voting against amendments in the White Paper. This bill is in the context of where we are now, which is a devolved government within a fixed budget, which we have no flexibility within, and that we can only deliver the transformational childcare policy if the people seize the opportunity of independence, and in which case we will be voting for childcare in the context of the White Paper.
Can I call Jane Baxter?
Thanks, Convener. Whilst I support all the amendments in this group, I wish to focus on my colleague Neil Bibby's amendments in the group. It's disappointing that we did not have the time to reach these amendments last week, especially considering the subsequent debate in the Chamber that afternoon, but we are finally here now. As we know, it's clear there is support from the Scottish Government for extending childcare to 50% of 2-year-olds. Indeed, it's clearly laid out in the White Paper. Where we differ from colleagues in the Scottish Government is that we want to deliver this commitment now. Amendments 85 and 86 in particular could make a real financial difference to many parents across Scotland. By putting these amendments into the Children and Young People's Bill today, we would be able to create a policy now, not years down the line, that would assist getting parents into work and help lift the most vulnerable children out of poverty.
Thank you very much. Can I call Joan McAlpine?
Thank you very much, Convener. Before I make my remarks, can I apologise to yourself, the Minister and other members for my slightly late arrival today. I'd like to speak to the same amendments, 84, 85, 86 in this group. I'd like to congratulate Liam MacArthur on the measured nature of his remarks. And the consistent nature of his remarks and his acknowledgement that what the Government is proposing is a substantial advance in terms of early years education. But I think it has to be put on record that the Labour Party have absolutely no credibility whatsoever on this particular measure, because they, last week they voted against an extension of childcare, and they haven't a clue how they're going to pay for it under the devolved settlement, other than to deprive young children of free school meals, which is a policy that is backed widely by child poverty charities. We can only advance to the level that we require with full independence, which allows childcare, the income tax from women coming back to work, to come back into the economy, to make the policy sustainable in the long term. And therefore, I would not support these amendments, and I find it absolutely amazing that Labour have the cheek to put them down today, to be perfectly honest.
Thank you. Can I call Liz Smith?
Thank you, Convener. I fully understand that obviously not all childcare can be delivered all in one context. I fully accept that. The Conservatives have been totally consistent on that basis. Nonetheless, I think there is a major point of principle within this. At no stage, Minister, either within the committee evidence or within the negotiations with individual members, did we have any indication whatsoever of the possible changes to this policy in terms of how the money would be found. and also in terms of the timescale. So I think I regret the fact that you're announcing that it would have to come to secondary legislation, because I think the intention of this bill has been clear. In fact, in the government's own comments, it's been very clear about what the major principle behind the bill is, which is very much in respect of childcare. So I regret the fact that that has seems to have been dissipated, and we end up in a situation where some of these amendments have to be discussed, obviously in this forum in stage 2 and possibly in stage 3, when in fact they are very much central to the arguments that are being put forward, particularly by many of the children's charities. So I will be adding my support to these because I think they are important amendments in advancing the nature of the policy debate.
Thank you very much. Liz, if I could just make one or two remarks myself before coming to the Minister. I have to be honest and say, without the proper analysis of where the finance is coming from, I find it impossible that any member really should seriously consider supporting the amendments in the name of Neil Bibby. In the debate last week, Mr Bibby stated that we could just use the £300 million of Barnett consequentials. I'm afraid that shows a level of financial illiteracy on behalf of Labour that, frankly, is gobsmacking. We all know that part of the £300 million is capital. We also know that another part of it is financial transactions, and what is left can only be the money that's been announced for free school meals, which the Labour Party have already said they would use, but that is insufficient to pay for the £100 million policy that Mr Bibby wishes to introduce. That only leaves the money that has been allocated to business rates to equalise the poundage between Scotland and England, and the money to expand the small business bonus scheme. If Mr Bibby can tell us how he will actually get the £100 million that it will cost to pay for this particular policy, then I'm sure members would be extremely interested in that detail. What is also missing from these amendments, or in fact the comments by the Labour members, is how the capacity to introduce this policy now would be dealt with, where the staff would come from, how that would be paid for, or any other detail whatsoever that would make this policy available and sustainable to be introduced now. I think this amendments, or the amendments in the name of Neil Bibby, are no more than an attempt to cover the Labour Party's embarrassment at voting against free school meals and the expansion of childcare that was announced last week by the First Minister. I know you're in a difficult and embarrassing position, but I don't think these amendments actually help you out of it. So I do not support the amendments in the name of Neil Bibby. Therefore, can I call the Minister?
Thank you, Convener. We share the ambitions to deliver early learning and childcare to significantly more two-year-olds in greater need, and we know that children from more disadvantaged backgrounds will benefit most from the high-quality early learning and childcare. And far from ruling out expansion in my letter, I've been consistently will expand through secondary legislation. We had always planned to expand eligibility through the order-making power in the bill when it was affordable, and that is subject to affirmative procedures, so it will receive detailed parliamentary scrutiny. This is why such an order-making power was included in the bill, as I actually said in the 8th of October. Now, I'm absolutely delighted that the First Minister announced last week that we will increase the entitlement to those two-year-olds set out in Amendment 86 from August next year, but we do not need an amendment to do this. The proposals announced by the First Minister, which Neil Bibby's party, as you pointed out, Convener, voted against, cover two-year-olds and families seeking work. Approximately 15% of two-year-olds from August this year, followed by those two-year-olds set out in Neil Bibby's Amendment 86, approximately 27% of two-year-olds who would meet free school meals criteria. This represents a phased, sustainable expansion of childcare for the most vulnerable two-year-olds. Now, we're prioritising those young children and families who will benefit most from expansion in funded hours. And this is a positive step in expanding childcare, but it's not the transformation that we seek through independence. This can only come when the revenue generated by increased numbers of women in the labour market can be used to pay for the increased provision in childcare. So while we do share Neil Bibby's ambitions, we have to be absolutely realistic. There are not the resources to do what he proposes. As we set out in Scotland's future, a more fundamental transformation of childcare for pre-5 children will only be possible with the increased tax revenues that help fund expanded childcare. Under our proposals, by increasing labour market participation, more national insurance would be paid, while increased spending would boost VAT receipts and companies would pay corporation tax on the profits generated by their employees. This is about transforming the structure of our economy and the nature of our society. And that's why our ambitions for childcare cannot be funded on the consequential handouts of our own money back from Westminster. Under devolution, the vast majority of tax revenues flow to Westminster. We pay for Westminster policies also that we don't necessarily agree with, such as Trident. And we try to mitigate the impact of welfare cuts, which we can't reverse as tens of thousands of children grow up in poverty. Suggestions of 50,000 children pushed into poverty as a result of the Coalition's welfare reforms. So I would urge members also to take recognition that we had also always planned to expand early learning and childcare provision through secondary legislation, and the intention was made clear that this would apply to 3- and 4-year-olds in the first instance, with further expansion when it was affordable and sustainable. The confirmation of consequential funding in December has enabled us to commit to making this initial expansion. Now, I would urge Neil Bibby in his closing remarks to provide us with the clarity on how he and the Labour Party expect the proposals to be delivered, not just in terms of the money, though I would be extremely interested in Neil Bibby's comments about how he intends to fund it. And I think the points that you raised, Convener, about the consequentials and understanding of the consequentials is a good one and a very valid one, but also interested in terms of how he intends to deliver it through the capacity, through such as staffing, and how he expects that to be coped with between now and August of this year. And if he can, then the rate of expansion he proposes could be, I would suggest, viewed as political grandstanding if he cannot be specific in how he wants to deliver it. Now, I want to turn as well, because there are other amendments within this group that I want to discuss, and those are 338 and 339, which seeks to extend the 600 hours to 2-year-olds who qualify for disability living allowance, and to 2-year-olds who have been identified as having additional support needs for the purposes of Education Support for Learning, Scotland Act 2004. It is important that parents and professionals recognise that young children with additional support needs should be supported through the Additional Support for Learning Scotland Act. There are existing duties to provide appropriate educational support for disabled children before the entitlement to funded early learning and childcare takes effect, potentially from birth where a need is identified. Young children with additional support needs or a disability will also benefit from the named person and a requirement for a child's plan where there is a wellbeing need identified from birth. A key issue for young children with additional support needs that arise or become apparent in the first few years of their lives is the identification of those needs. A child's health and wellbeing are assessed from birth during the contact set out in the Child Health Programme, which now includes a 27-month universal health review. The named person will support the identification of wellbeing concerns at an even earlier stage than entitlement to early learning and childcare. And finally, under the Bill's proposals that local authorities consult with locally representative populations of parents, local authorities should use the opportunities to encourage broad, open and transparent dialogue with parents and to identify needs of parents with a range of needs, including those who have children who are disabled. The statutory guidance supporting the early learning and childcare provisions of the Bill will refer to the Code of Practice on additional support for learning under Section 27 of the SL Scotland Act 2004 to make clear the existing obligations of local authorities regarding disabled 2-year-olds and those with additional support needs. Therefore, we don't consider an amendment on the face of the bill is necessary. So, in conclusion, Convener, I've set out some of the more specific reasons why we can't support amendments 338 and 339. But going back to the points that raised by Neil Bibby, we notified an extension, a significant expansion of childcare last week. We have always been clear that this could be done through secondary legislation, but the real crux of the matter is finding out where Neil Bibby intends to find the funding to cover what he suggests today, and also the capacity issues, which are real and significant if we are to ensure that the quality is there for 2-year-olds, to ensure that they can benefit developmentally from this first step in towards transforming childcare in Scotland. If he can't, then there's something very seriously lacking in what he's proposing today.
Minister, can I call Neil Bibby to wind up and to indicate whether he wishes to press or withdraw his amendment?
Thank you, Convener. I'd just like to firstly rebut some of the highly misleading claims, I think, mentioned by Joan McAlpine, the Minister, and yourself, Convener, that Labour voted against increased childcare last week. I would remind members that Labour proposed last week to give half of Scotland's 2-year-olds childcare now, and the SNP proposed 15%, then 27%. So if any party voted against increased childcare last week, I think it was SNP members, and I would urge members to be careful and considered when making such erroneous claims, which I think highlights the insecurity of SNP members on their own policy of childcare. So far, Labour and other opposition parties have put forward dozens of amendments to this bill, and not one of them has been supported by a single SNP member of the committee or the Scottish Government. Perhaps this shouldn't be surprising, but what I am surprised about is that SNP members are not supporting their own childcare policies in the White Paper, nor the policy change they announced last week. Failure of the Government to support its own policy will leave parents and families perplexed as to how committed the SNP Government are to its own childcare policy. It's the Government's number one priority 1 week, then it isn't, then it is again. What we heard from the Minister was confusing and excuses. The Minister, who said she wasn't going to go further on 2-year-olds, now says she was going to go further all along. Incidentally, after the First Minister's announcement last week, the Scottish Government have the powers and resources to provide half of Scotland's 2-year-olds childcare just now.
Always been. Will Mr. Burley take an intervention?
I will just conclude my remarks. Thanks. They proved that last week. Labour supports more childcare now under devolution. I've said already that the SNP could have gone much further than last week, but they have chosen not to. Now, the issue of finances has been raised. If the finance is the objection to these amendments, then Amendment 86 cannot possibly be objected to by SNP members, as they actually announced the money for that policy last week. That is not an argument against Amendment 86. Amendment 86 has been pledged last week and fully funded by the Scottish Government. In terms of Amendment 85, I would simply point out again, it is a matter of priorities. The Scottish Government pledged to spend £88 million in 2015-16 on free school meals and childcare last week, and I have no doubt that the Scottish Government could have found an additional £12 million and will find an additional £12 million from somewhere before the budget is finalised, should they wish to meet the costs of £100 million. In terms of the comments about financial literacy, I would remind the Minister it was the Minister that had to reforecast the estimated costs for providing childcare for looked after 2-year-olds from £1.1 million to £4.5 million in the bill. Capacity issues have also been raised. I would just remind the Minister of her comments that she said on the 8th of May, it's not acceptable to this Government to run the risk of there being adverse impacts on our youngest children. That was an objection to increasing 2-year-olds beyond 3%. And again, capacity issues is certainly not a reason to object to Amendment 86, and I don't think it's a reason to object to Amendment 85 either. So the SNP could and should go further, as Labour suggested, but chosen not to. In a YouGov survey last week, it showed parents agree 6% of parents think the Scottish Government should get on with expanding childcare now. However, despite what the Minister has said, she will not put an extension of 2-year-olds on the face of the bill. Given that 2-year-old entitlement is already there on the face of the bill, and it is the Government's own policy, I think parents will be confused and be questioning again how committed the SNP Government are to their own childcare policies. They will be confused as to why the Scottish Government are not putting the Scottish Government's own stated commitments to childcare in the bill. And as I said before, also, in spite of the partial U-turn last week, as of September this year, 40% of 2-year-olds in England will get nursery, only 15% of 2-year-olds in Scotland will, and even when it goes up to 27%, the SNP Government will still be lagging behind the Conservative and Liberal Democrat coalition. The SNP could go further now in childcare, but have chosen not to. The bill really is a missed opportunity. This will be remembered as the childcare bill with next to no childcare commitments in it. You do not need separation to increase childcare. You have said you share Labour's ambitions for increasing childcare. If you do, then vote for our amendments.
The question is that Amendment 84 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We're not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Those members supporting Amendment 84, please show. Those opposed? Abstentions? The result of the vote on Amendment 84, 3 votes in favour, 5 votes against and 1 abstention. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 338 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 84. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move? Moved. The question is that Amendment 338 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Can those members who wish to support Amendment 338 please show? Thank you. Those against? The result of the vote on Amendment 338, 4 votes in favour, 5 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 85 in the name of Neil Bibby, already debated with Amendment 84. Neil Bibby, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 85 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Those members who are supporting Amendment 85, please vote now. Those against? Abstentions? The result of the vote on Amendment 85, 3 votes in favour, 5 votes against and 1 abstention. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 86 in the name of Neil Bibby, already debated with Amendment 84. Neil Bibby, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 86 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Those members who wish to support Amendment 86, please vote now. Thank you. Those against? Abstentions? The result of the vote on Amendment 86 was that there were 3 votes in favour, 5 votes against and 1 abstention. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 339 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 84. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move? Moved. The question is that Amendment 339 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not all agreed, and therefore there will be a division. Those members who wish to support Amendment 339, please vote now. Those against? The result of the vote on Amendment 339, there were 4 votes in favour, 5 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 340 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 84. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move? Moved. The question is that Amendment 340 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not all agreed. Would those members who wish to support Amendment 340 please vote now? Thank you. Those against? The result of the vote on Amendment 340, 4 votes in favour, 5 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 49 in the name of Liz Smith, already debated with Amendment 48. Liz Smith, to move or not move?
Moved.
Not moved. Therefore, can I call Amendment 327 in the name of Neil Bibby, grouped with Amendments 301, 302, 344, 345 and 346. Neil Bibby, to move Amendment 327 and speak to other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. I'm happy to move Amendment 327 and speak to the other amendments in the group. Childcare for the early years is only one part of the Scottish model of childcare we need to develop. We need to ensure we have a model of childcare that meets the needs of children and their families up to the age of 14. That's why Labour proposed a Childcare Commission back in May of last year to look at all of these issues, and it was very unfortunate the proposal was rejected by the Scottish Government. It was particularly unfortunate because the Children and Young People Bill says nothing about out-of-school care and childcare at holiday times. The White Paper doesn't mention it either, which I believe is a major oversight. Improving access, availability and affordability of out-of-school care is crucial in developing a Scottish model of childcare which supports children and helps parents. My Labour colleagues and I have also consistently raised these issues in committee and the Chamber when the bill has been discussed and childcare has been debated more generally. Amendment 327, supported by Barnardo's Children First and others, seeks to ensure that increasing childcare for the early years is not done to the detriment of out-of-school and holiday care. Councils are suffering significantly from budget cuts. I believe councils want to work with the Scottish Government to improve childcare, but they obviously need the funds to do that, and there is concern that out-of-school care and holiday care is vulnerable due to budget pressures, and this amendment would ensure the protection of existing services. Children First, in their briefing for today's meeting, have said parents and carers who contact Parent Line Scotland tell them that the need to improve availability of age-appropriate and affordable childcare for older children is a major issue. Childcare is important throughout childhood and is not limited to the early years. Amendment 302 from Claire Adamson I believe is welcome, as it at least mentions out-of-school care. I believe the amendment, however, does little new, as I would suspect local authorities already consult and plan alongside parents, and also does in relation to Amendment 301. But I do welcome their intention to ensure this happens. However, I would ask why this has to be done every 2 years as opposed to 3, 4 or 5 years. The general point to make, however, is that the Scottish Government clearly do not view out-of-school care as a priority. No mention in the bill, no mention in the White Paper. However, just because the current SNP administration do not place an emphasis on it does not mean we can pass an amendment that would allow future governments who do value out-of-school care the opportunity to increase the availability of out-of-school care in the future. Amendment 346 would ensure that the Scottish Government, working with local authorities and their community planning partners, provide out-of-school care. I said the Children of Scotland, Scottish Out-School Care Network, Parenting Across Scotland, the Scottish Childminding Association and One Parent Families Scotland point out non-statutory services are vulnerable to cuts. Coupled with the changes planned by the UK Coalition Government that will result in financial support for parents over 5 being withdrawn and successor arrangements only being put in place incrementally over several years, they fear parents and carers here could face severe pressure. There is therefore an increasing case to put the provision of childcare for school-aged children on a statutory foot in Scotland. Those organisations believe that priority should be given to school-aged children living in low-income households and working parents. Others may disagree with this focus, but the key is to establish out-of-school care as a key part of a Scottish model of childcare. Scottish children are currently at a disadvantage compared to English children. In this regard, there is already an existing duty on local authorities in England, Childcare Act 2006, passed by the previous UK Labour Government, to secure sufficient childcare for working parents, and this covers childcare for children up to 14 years. Amendment 344 would introduce a right to childcare for young children, school-aged children under 15. It is widely recognised that there is a lack of suitable childcare in Scotland for children and their families. As I said earlier in the bill, the bill says little about childcare for children under 3 and nothing for school-aged children. There is also already considerable support for this measure. The Parliament's Equal Opportunities Committee recommended that childcare for school-aged children should be available on a statutory basis for children up to the age of 15. There is also public support for this, with Save the Children already collecting over 1,000 signatures for this petition to the Scottish Government. As it is widely recognised, and as I would very much recognise, there are of course cost implications for delivering a wider childcare improvements in the long term. I do not expect this to happen, nor would I expect any members to expect this to happen overnight. Working together across parties, though, I hope we can amend this bill to ensure that we are able to act when resources become available and can be given to local authorities to implement more childcare for primary school aged children. My fear again is that this bill as it stands is unambitious and with a missed opportunity without substantial amendments in this area.
Can I call Claire Adamson to speak to Amendment 301 and other amendments in the group?
Thank you, Convener. I will speak to my own amendment, and can I start by thanking Save the Children and other children's charities who have been involved in drafting up this amendment. The purpose of the amendment is to require authorities every 2 years to consult and prepare and publish plans in relation to early learning and childcare which they have the power to provide. This, coupled with the requirement in section 46 of the bill to consult and prepare and publish plans in relation to 600 hours of mandatory early learning and childcare, will ensure a comprehensive picture of the availability and integration of those services consistently across the country. The amendments will also require authorities every 2 years to consult and plan in relation to all day care and out-of-school care which they have either a duty or a power to provide, and ensure a comprehensive picture of availability and to identify opportunities to integrate and support that provision where appropriate. I think that these amendments will provide local authorities with a more comprehensive picture of provision for childcare of all ages and will encourage integrated and longer-term planning of a support and range of provision. I also believe that it will increase transparency and include parents and carers in the process at a level not achieved in the current planning process.
Can I call George Adam?
Thank you, Convener. We've already heard today Labour's unsustainable proposals for childcare. You know, you said yourself, Convener, it was fiscal illiteracy, but I think we've verged on to fiscal fantasy at the moment with the Labour Party, where they actually, you know, Neil Bibby says he knows that there'll be costs involved, but he doesn't expect it to happen overnight. Well, why has he changed his attitude then? Because everything else is expected to happen overnight. So I would ask him at that point, you know, why this change in heart? Why actually not? You keep asking everything to be delivered now and at this precise moment. Now, as in everything else in this bill is a starting point. It's a beginning. It's an opportunity for us to actually build towards something better for children in Scotland. And I would say on this issue that we have to look at, you know, as some of my colleagues already said, the White Paper puts out that when we do get the powers of independence, we can make that life-changing difference to these young people's lives. And I think that's the important thing here. But one of the things on the actual amendments themselves, I would ask Mr Bibby, how would he pay for it? From the point of view, you know, would this be another attack on the small business bonus, or would it be something else that they would try and take the money away from, you know, within the confines of devolution? And I would ask Mr Bibby, has he spoken to COSLA and other organisations that are relevant with regards to this? Because in 327, it's unnecessary because local authorities already have a statutory duty under the Children's Scotland Act to provide care in outside school hours and during school holidays. And in 344, daycare for preschool children would be no different than the early learning children provision that's already been offered by the bill. So, you know, I don't know whether it's not only does Mr Bibby have difficulty with the fiscal side of things, he may have difficulty understanding the bill itself. You know, 345 is too bureaucratic and it would be difficult to define at a national level. So, you know, he talks about trying to work with local government, but I think having worked with Mr Bibby in local government, I would say my 5 years was spent understanding what local government's about and how you actually work with them in a partnership, as opposed to just coming from the centre and actually enforcing things on them. So I would ask Mr Bibby and his colleagues in Labour to think again and actually try to be part of the real world, join us here in the real world, where we actually work within the fiscal boundaries of the devolved settlement and look to a better future that independence offers.
Who can I call the Minister?
Thank you, Convener. The amendments in Neil Bibby's name highlight the very important issue of out-of-school care, and out-of-school care is an issue that we do take very seriously indeed within the Scottish Government. The financial memorandum has estimated the additional costs arising from the bill, and the Scottish Government's draft budget for 2014-15 and 15-16 has included those costs for early learning and childcare in full. The Scottish Government has also since committed to fully funding the cost of an additional 15% for 2-year-olds in 2014 at £15 million and an additional 27% of 2-year-olds in 2015 at £44 million. There is therefore no reason for local authorities to reduce funding from any budgets to meet the additional costs of early learning and childcare as specified in the bill and through secondary legislation, and we would not expect this to happen. Amendments 344, 345 and 346 seek to introduce rights to daycare for all preschool children and to out-of-school care for children attending school up to the age of 14. They also seek to impose duties on local authorities to secure sufficient daycare and out-of-school care to enable parents to work or study based on assessments of sufficiency and the setting of mandatory hours for out-of-school care. However, the effect of these amendments is to go down a route that has not worked in England and is currently being repealed, creates rights that can't be delivered and for which there is no immediate capacity or resourcing, and imposes duties on local authorities that are both subject to mandatory hours but to be delivered only as reasonably practicable and therefore likely to be confusing and ineffective. The Scottish Government has consistently indicated that provisions in the bill are a first but significant step towards developing a system of early learning and childcare that meets the needs of all children, parents and families. Daycare for preschool children is to a large degree in practice the same provision as early learning and childcare. And this bill and associated guidance documents will make clear how local authorities can deliver their statutory duties alongside wider powers for children before they start school. Now, I've been consistently clear that this bill is a starting point, a point that has been reiterated as well by George Adam, and that we will expand entitlement where this is affordable through secondary legislation under the bill, under an all-encompassing definition of early learning childcare. I've also said consistently that high quality is paramount, and that's why, Convener, we have announced further significant increases in the number of eligible 2-year-olds using consequentials confirmed by the UK Government in December of last year. It's why also the First Minister has asked the Council of Economic Advisers to consider the economic and social impacts of improving levels of childcare and to guide our thinking on changes in policy that could provide the best system for children and families in our economy, and has identified transformational change of early learning and childcare as a key priority for Scotland. It's also why we have set out in the White Paper Scotland's future transformational change could only be achieved with independence to match the levels that are commonplace right across Europe. It's also why I announced that I would ask the Early Years Task Force to look at out-of-school care and recommend what more can be done on this area, working with and engaging with our valued partners such as SCMA, SOSCIN, CALA, etc. Many have already benefited through the Third Sector Early Intervention Fund or our strategic funding partners. I am supporting Amendments 301 and 302 that will support those longer-term aims to develop systems of early learning and childcare and out-of-school care and enable local authorities to coordinate consultation and planning of all mandatory provision of early learning and childcare alongside non-mandatory provision which local authorities have the power to deliver or support. So I welcome amendments in Claire Adamson's name and that aim to broaden the scope of consultation and planning in the bill to reflect its longer-term aims to develop systems of early childhood learning and care for all children, parents and their families. Now, I agree that they will provide local authorities with a more comprehensive picture for children of all ages and will encourage integrated and longer-term planning of and support for the range of provision. This will create the opportunity for local authorities to coordinate consultation and planning of all mandatory provision of early learning and childcare and out-of-school provision alongside non-mandatory provision which local authorities have the power to deliver or support. So therefore, Convener, I support in this group only the amendments in Claire Adamson's name.
Thank you, Minister. Can I call Neil Bibby to wind up and indicate whether he wishes to press or withdraw his amendment?
Thanks, Convener. As I said at the start, I believe it is a major oversight the Scottish Government have not mentioned out of school and holiday care and the children and young people bill or the White Paper. I welcome what the Minister said about the Early Years Task Force now looking at the issue of out-of-school care, but I think that should have been done or started quite some time ago. We need to do more. It's clear we need to do more to improve access to and availability and affordability of out-of-school care during term time and school holidays. Given this and the concerns raised by parents and opposition parties, I am surprised that the Minister has not come forward when any of her own amendments on out-of-school care. As I said earlier, I welcome Claire Adamson bringing forward Amendment 302 in this area. However, I must say, I do not believe Amendment 302 sufficiently addresses the issue and the concerns we have heard. This is because I would already expect local authorities consult and plan these services at the moment in conjunction with parents. I believe there is a real danger that if Claire Adamson's Amendment 302 is successful just on its own, then the bill may say something about out-of-school care now, but I fear it won't do very much to improve out-of-school care. And that's why I put forward the other amendments in this area for consideration. Amendment 327 to protect existing out-of-school care services, and the other provide a potential framework for childcare for children under 3 and primary school aged children. In relation to Mr Adams' point, Mr Adam mentioned the Children's Scotland Act 1995 already has regard to this. If Mr Adam reads my amendments, I'm proposing to amend the Children's Scotland Act 1995 because I don't think the legislation is sufficient in the Children's Scotland Act 1995. In terms of finances, as I said before, as is widely recognised, I would very much recognise potential cost implications for delivering a childcare improvements in this long term, but what these amendments do is provide the framework for doing so. I accept this wouldn't happen overnight, but in the longer term and working across parties, I hope we can amend this bill. I'm happy to take an intervention.
The member admits that there would be financial implication. I already asked during my own part of the debate, how would you pay for the financial implication? How would you actually pay for this?
I think Mr Adam is missing the point. What these amendments would do is would provide the framework for providing out-of-school care and holiday care for children before 3 and up to the age of 14. Obviously, to come up with individual policies after that would then be allowed, and it would be up to individual parties to propose policies along those lines. But these amendments provide the framework for doing that. And I hope, working across parties, we can amend the bill to ensure we are able to act when resources become available and be given to local authorities to implement more childcare for primary school age children. I accept there may be concerns over some aspects of the amendments, but they seek to address a gaping hole in the Scottish Government's childcare policy. If these amendments are not passed at stage 2, I would sincerely hope that we could revisit them or something similar at stage 3. It's all very well to criticise the proposed amendments, but there is a need to address this issue. And with the exception of Claire Adamson, not even the Minister has put forward any proposals. I therefore hope members would support these motions at stage 2, but if not, we can revisit this at stage 3. Otherwise, this will be another area that means this bill will be a missed opportunity.
The question is that Amendment 327 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Would those members who wish to support Amendment 327 please show? Thank you. Those against? The result of the vote on Amendment 327, there were 4 votes in favour, 5 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 50 in the name of Liz Smith, already debated with Amendment 48. Liz Smith, to move or not move?
Not moved.
It's not moved. The question is that Section 43 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Can I call Amendment 341 in the name of Jane Baxter, grouped with Amendment 313? Jane Baxter, to move Amendment 341 and speak to both amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. This amendment is designed to ensure that the order-making powers in Section 43 are subject to increased parliamentary scrutiny. Its intent is to ensure greater input from key stakeholders, and the order specifying eligible preschool children would be given the scrutiny worthy of such an important decision and is properly debated by the Parliament. As is clear from the debate we've had today, childcare and the provisions made by this Parliament to support children and their parents are a hugely important issue. The procedure set out in the amendment will ensure that all relevant bodies are consulted on the provisions and give them an opportunity to help shape the proposals as they are brought forward.
Thank you very much. Can I call the Minister to speak to Amendment 313 and the other amendment in the group? Minister.
Thank you. 341 seeks to make the order-making powers in Section 43 2C2 to specify those children who are eligible for early learning childcare subject to the super affirmative procedure. My amendment 313 makes this order subject to the affirmative procedure on the recommendation of the Delegated Powers and Law Reform Committee. We consider that the affirmative procedure will offer a more detailed level of parliamentary scrutiny for this order, which we consider is appropriate. Extensive consultation with stakeholders in relation to the eligibility for the 600 hours of free early learning and childcare and on supporting statutory guidance to be issued in relation to the bill provisions has been undertaken and will continue to be undertaken over the coming months. This will build on our continuing consultation with stakeholders. And I believe we have a great deal of consensus around our aims to increase eligibility, focusing on those children who are most vulnerable in the first instance, and we will engage closely with stakeholders to achieve this. However, we consider that making the order subject to the super affirmative procedure is not necessary here. So therefore, I would ask the members to support the amendment in my name.
Thank you very much. No other member has indicated that they wish to contribute, but can I call Jane Baxter to wind up or to indicate whether she wishes to press or withdraw her amendment?
Going to press my amendment, Convener. I think the level of interest and contribution we've seen right through this bill is a measure of the knowledge and the expertise and the interest that's out there, and I think this amendment provides an opportunity for that to be channelled and brought to bear on the issue. So I move.
Thank you very much. The question is that Amendment 341 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Can I ask members who wish to support Amendment 341 to please show? Thank you. Those against? Thank you. Abstentions? The result of the vote on Amendment 341, 2 votes in favour, 6 votes against and 1 abstention. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. The question is that sections 44 to 46 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I call Amendment 342 in the name of Liam MacArthur, grouped with Amendment 343? Liam MacArthur to move Amendment 342 and speak to both amendments in the group. Liam.
Very much, Convener. I'm well aware that my track record in getting amendments passed so far has been less than impressive. I put the blame for that squarely with a woeful lack of chivalry at the door of the Minister, but I will try and break my ill-deserved duck. Amendment 342 reflects the fact that whether it's an increase in hours of early learning and childcare for 3 and 4 years or an expansion in provision for 2-year-olds from the most disadvantaged backgrounds, what matters most is the quality of what's provided, a point I think made by the Minister in earlier remarks. As Children First point out, quote, increasing the amount of early learning and childcare will do nothing to improve outcomes for children if this care is of low quality. This is not a point on which there will be any dispute within the committee, and I think the Minister has already signalled her agreement in that respect. Yet it's not clear how the bill guards against a potential dilution of quality, and therefore my amendment leaves open at least the option for minimum standards to be agreed and set by ministers if and where appropriate. Turning to Amendment 343, this would allow Parliament a means of monitoring progress in delivery by local authorities of greater flexibility in the delivery of early learning and childcare services. The committee heard at stage 1 that the current lack of flexibility in the way in which nursery provision is provided is a problem, particularly for parents on lower incomes or without a wider network of family or friend support. There are concerns that the bill has not delivered the improvements promised initially and that the have regard duty on local authorities may provide less than adequate incentive for further change across the country, leading to the prospect, according to Save the Children and others, of more, quote, postcode lotteries for childcare. In that context, it does seem sensible and necessary to ensure that data is collected on the progress being made in subsequent years. In that way, ministers and Parliament can identify where barriers remain and take a view on whether or not further action and the necessary resources are required. I hope, as I say, that these 2 amendments find favour with colleagues and the Minister, and move Amendment 342 in my name.
Thank you very much. No other member has indicated they wish to contribute at this stage. Therefore, can I call the Minister to speak to Amendments 342 and 343?
Okay, thank you, Convener. And unfortunately, we're not in a position to assist Liam MacArthur in breaking his duck. However, I do want to recognise many of the amendments that Liam MacArthur has moved, the spirit in which he has moved them, and do want to continue working with him and other members to improve this bill. And I'll go on to outline why we can't support these amendments in his name this morning. Amendment 342 seeks to introduce minimum standards for early learning and childcare provision and to enable any provider who meets these standards to be able to deliver the entitlement where a parent wishes it. It's important to note that the bill maintains local authorities' key responsibility for the system in Scotland, including their duties to secure partnership places and secure improvement in quality of provision. This ensures important joint working with partner providers at a local level to maintain and improve quality over and above standards set by Education Scotland and the Care Inspectorate. While local authorities can continue to use partner providers to provide capacity and flexibility, it's important that expansion of provision and flexibility builds upon the good quality delivered by local authorities. And that's why we're also asking local authorities to reconfigure their provisions, and we're putting capital into the system to support adaptations and improvements to the infrastructure to enable this to happen. We highly value the contribution of partner providers of early learning and childcare, and in the past we have called mainly on partner providers to deliver the flexibility for working parents. We should move away from debates about the providers to a focus on where parents can access high quality provision and patterns of hours that meet their needs. We can secure diversity, high quality and flexibility from all sectors, and it's for local authorities to manage that process. We've put flexibility and choice on a statutory footing for the very first time. Local authorities will consult with parents locally on patterns of hours which would allow a degree of choice and flexibility, and will develop systems to deliver this. Funded early learning and childcare is part of our high-quality universal education system based on the National Framework's Curriculum for Excellence and pre-birth to 3 positive outcomes for Scotland's children and families. By securing any expansion of this service through education authorities, we will protect education quality and integration with other key areas of policy and practice for children, such as GIRFEC, additional support for learning and child protection, amongst many more. We will maintain a high-quality universal service, which we can also seek to expand and build upon to meet the needs of a wider range of children and families in the future. Amendment 343 seeks to place a duty on Scottish ministers to report to the Parliament on progress with regard to the delivery of flexibility of early learning and childcare. When we consulted on the bill, respondents told us that placing duties on local authorities to offer a specific range of early learning and childcare flexible options would not be effective in ensuring more flexible delivery. Therefore, we didn't include that in the bill. The bill now strengthens the original plans on flexibility proposed in the consultation by allowing a far more broader, more diverse, more locally based needs and options, and being more reflective of them. In addition, each local authority will have to publish plans as a result of their consultations with representative populations of parents on patterns of provision that would best meet their needs. Education authorities will also be under a duty to have regard to the desirability of ensuring that the method by which it makes early learning and childcare available is flexible enough to allow parents an appropriate degree of choice over patterns of provision when deciding how to access the service. These provisions around consulting, planning and flexibility are sufficient, and transparency and local accountability will be key to this whole process. The requirement for Scottish ministers to report to Parliament would represent disproportionate bureaucracy and centralisation. So therefore we don't support Amendments 342 and 343. But again, Convener, I would reiterate that where amendments do seek to improve the bill, we are very happy to engage and to accept those, and think that the reasons I've outlined for 343 and 342 demonstrate that we've considered these amendments very carefully, but are not in a position at this point to accept.
Minister, can I call Liam MacArthur to wind up and to indicate whether he wishes to press or withdraw his amendment?
Thank you, Convener. I'm grateful to the Minister for at least attempting to let me down gently in relation to these amendments. I think in relation to Amendment 342, I certainly recognise that this is and must remain the responsibility of local authorities, both in terms of the quality and in terms of delivering the flexibility we want to see. This will inevitably, I think, draw upon what partner providers are able to deliver, and I don't necessarily envisage a problem in that respect, but I think it would be I think remiss of us not to put in the sort of safeguard that I'm envisaging through Amendment 342. In terms of 343, I can't see how a reporting requirement on ministers to Parliament can be seen as either bureaucratic or disproportionate. I think that the danger is that for the period that we are reflecting upon a bill, we focus a great deal of attention on it, the strengths and weaknesses of it, but there is inevitably a tendency for us then to move on to the next piece of legislation, the next issue that we're required to deal with, and not necessarily to return to it. And I think the issue of flexibility, we've all acknowledged, is something that will be delivered progressively over time, and therefore I do think that there is a need for us to keep at least a watching brief on this to establish where barriers remain and where further action is needed, and the resources to help deliver that action. So I'll be pressing both amendments in this group, but for now I'll press Amendment 342.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment 342 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Can those who wish to support Amendment 342 please show? Thank you. Those against? The result of the vote on Amendment 342, there were 4 votes in favour and 5 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. The question is that Section 47 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I call Amendment 343 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 342? Liam MacArthur to move or not move? Moved. The question is that Amendment 343 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Could those members who wish to support Amendment 343 please show? Thank you. Those against? The result of the vote on Amendment 343, there were 4 votes in favour, 5 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. The question is that Section 48 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The question is that Section 49 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Can I call Amendment 301 in the name of Claire Adamson, already debated with Amendment 327, Claire Adamson, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 301 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. Can I call Amendment 302 in the name of Claire Adamson, already debated with Amendment 327, Claire Adamson, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 302 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. Can I call Amendment 344 in the name of Neil Bibby, already debated with Amendment 327, Neil Bibby, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 344 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Can those members who wish to support Amendment 344 please show? Thank you. Those members who are against? The result of the vote on Amendment 344, 4 votes in favour, 5 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 345 in the name of Neil Bibby, already debated with Amendment 327, Neil Bibby, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 345 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Those supporting Amendment 345, please vote now. Thank you. Those against? The result of the vote on Amendment 345, there were 4 votes in favour and 5 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 346 in the name of Neil Bibby, already debated with Amendment 327, Neil Bibby, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 346 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Would those members who wish to support Amendment 346 please show? Those against? Thank you. The result of the vote on Amendment 346, 4 votes in favour, 5 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. We have reached the end of Part 6 of the bill, therefore I intend to take a short break now, so I'll suspend briefly. 3 in the name of the Minister, grouped with amendments 304 to 307, 347, 310 and 315. Minister, to move Amendment 303 and speak to other amendments in the group.
I move Amendment 303 in my name. Amendments 305, 306 and 307 remove the Scottish Court Service, the Scottish Further and Higher Education Funding Council and regional strategic bodies from the list of corporate parents contained in Schedule 3 to the Bill. This is because, as administration and funding bodies respectively, these organisations do not have a key role to play in direct decision-making about children and young people, so we are content that these organisations do not have a corporate parenting role. Amendment 303 retains the Commissioner for Children and Young People in Scotland and post-16 education bodies as corporate parents, but exempts them from the duty to comply with directions issued by Scottish ministers in Section 58 because it conflicts with their established status as independent from ministers, the Scottish Government and Parliament as set out in existing legislation. Additionally, should Scottish ministers add a new body to the list of corporate parents in the future, using the order-making power in Section 52 of the Bill, it allows the orders to modify Section 50 so that the same exemption from ministerial direction can be applied to that body, should that be appropriate. For example, if that new body has a similar protection of independence from ministers. Amendments 304, 310, 315 give Scottish ministers the flexibility to adjust the list of corporate parenting duties in Section 52 and also to modify their application to particular corporate parents by order. This will allow us to be flexible in future where certain duties may be more appropriate to apply to specific corporate parents. It is not intended that this power be used to reduce the baseline of duties, rather it will allow for the future adjustment of corporate parenting duties in light of experience and evolution of the role, including where necessary or desirable the flexibility to apply specific duties to an appropriate group of or indeed individual corporate parents. With respect to Jane Baxter's Amendment 347, we can't support that because it introduces a duty that is too specific to apply to all corporate parents. While we acknowledge the principle of what Amendment 347 is trying to achieve, it's not appropriate or practical to require those organisations who quite rightly have a role as a corporate parent but are not in the front line of supporting children and young people to promote and facilitate contact arrangements between them and those that have parental responsibilities for them and their siblings. Having said that, we believe the corporate parenting responsibilities in Section 52 of the Bill are quite clear and communicate the level of importance we place on that role. Each corporate parent will plan and report individually and collaboratively on how they have exercised this role. In due course, if required, Scottish ministers may use the order-making power set out in Amendment 310 to adjust the list of corporate parenting duties and also their application to particular corporate parents in light of the experience and evolution of the role. So, in summary, I ask that you support my amendments in this group and to consider not supporting Jane Baxter's Amendment 347, which we acknowledge the principle of, however, we can't support.
Thank you, Minister. Can I call Jane Baxter to speak to Amendment 347 and other amendments in the group?
Thank you, Convener. I wish to highlight the responsibilities of corporate parents as raised by my amendment in this group. The amendment has two main functions. First, to extend the current duty under Section 17 of the Children in Scotland Act 1995 on local authorities in respect of personal relations and contact between looked after children and their parents to all corporate parents. And second, to place a duty on corporate parents at least to consider whether contact between separated siblings is practicable and appropriate in the circumstances of each case, consistent with promoting the child's interests, while providing a safeguard where it is not practicable or appropriate. The Community Law Advice Network, who have extensive experience of representing children and young people, have highlighted the importance of this amendment, as they have found that the relationships that looked after children have with their siblings become all the more important to them when they are removed from their core family unit, and corporate parents often fail to consider the impact of sibling separation on children and young people, or promote the sibling relationship at all. Contact with siblings can be a reassuring link to the family home, which may come without the pressures that parental contact can often bring, such as supervision and assessment. Thanks.
Thank you. Can I call Liam MacArthur?
Thank you, Convener. Simply, I think in relation to Amendment 303, it would be helpful to get a bit of clarification from the Minister in relation to a point that's been raised with me. I mean, I certainly would not be arguing against the removal of any power of direction from ministers over colleges or universities, as colleagues will recall from the post-16 education bill process. Nevertheless, I think we're all aware of the concerns around the outcomes and educational attainment for those looked after in terms of their performance or their representation in further and higher education. And therefore, I think it would be helpful to know how the Minister would envisage, perhaps through outcome agreements, guidance to the Funding Council, how some of the objectives we all want to see in relation to looked after children might be attained without, as I say, necessarily going down the route of having ministerial powers of direction over our colleges and our universities. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I call the Minister to wind up?
Thank you, Convener, and I thank Jane Baxter for the amendments and for raising the points that she has brought today in describing what she intends through her amendment. But we don't support the introduction of duties that are too specific to apply to all corporate parents. The corporate parenting responsibilities in section 52 of the bill clearly communicate the level of importance we place on this role if required, and in light of experience and evolution of the role, Scottish ministers may use order-making powers set out in Amendment 310 to adjust the list of corporate parenting duties and also their application to particular corporate parents. So again, it's just about that being too specific to really apply to all of them and the different kind of levels of interaction that those corporate parents have. However, we do again appreciate Jane Baxter raising some of the points that she's made. In relation to Liam MacArthur's points, my officials have engaged with all of the relevant organisations before making a determination about whether or not to remove them from Schedule 3. But it's about trying to balance up their kind of independence against the direction that ministers have. But nevertheless, we feel that as organisations, many should have a corporate parent responsibility, but that balance with direction needs to be worked through, and through guidance we'll be able to issue that balance through this part of the bill. So again, we can work with all those stakeholders that may have remaining concerns, but certainly the guidance will tidy up some of that, and we're working with stakeholders to ensure that this does what we intend it to do, to ensure that we strengthen corporate parenting for children across Scotland.
Thank you, Minister. The question is that Amendment 303 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. Can I call Amendment 304 in the name of the Minister? Already debated with Amendment 303. Minister, to move formally.
Move formally.
The question is that Amendment 304 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes, we are. The question is that Section 50 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Call amendments 305, 306 and 307, all in the name of the Minister and all previously debated. And can I invite the Minister to move amendments 305 to 307 en bloc? Can I ask whether any member objects to a single question being put on amendments 305 to 307? No members objected. Therefore, the question is that amendments 305 to 307 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. The question is that Schedule 3 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? That's agreed. Can I call Amendment 308 in the name of the Minister, group with other amendments as shown in the groupings? Minister, to move Amendment 308 and speak to all other amendments in the group. Minister.
Sorry, thank you, Convener. I move Amendment 308 in my name, and this particular area of the bill is quite sizeable, so I'll try to do my best to keep them as succinct as possible, my comments. However, there is an awful lot to get through, and I want to make sure I give as much information as I possibly can to the committee. Now, the committee will be aware that on the 6th of January I announced the Scottish Government's commitment to a number of measures to support care leavers over the next 10 to 12 years. All of my amendments in this group form part of that wider package. Starting in 2015, through these amendments, each new cohort of 16-year-olds in foster, kinship or residential care will have a right to stay in care until they are 21 years old. This means over the coming years, just as is the case with their non-looked after peers, those who are not ready to leave home will be entitled to remain with their carers until the age of 21, and ultimately will put in place measures to enable care leavers to return to care if they need the support as they make their way towards independent living. Just as important, this package of amendments provides that local authorities will be required to notify Scottish ministers and the Care Inspectorate about the death of any care leaver in receipt of aftercare services. This is so that, where possible in such tragic circumstances, lessons are learned to ensure as far as possible that services are doing their utmost for all our young people who have been in care. My amendments also seek to clarify the eligibility of those care leavers who are entitled to corporate parenting and aftercare support, and seek order-making powers to extend these types of support to further cohorts of formerly looked after children through secondary legislation. During all stages of development of this bill, it has been our absolute priority to consult and engage in some detail with young people and all parts of the sector to steer a path through the complex and emotive issues covered in different parts of this bill. As a result, we know this bill is better, and we want this level of commitment to continue into the expert group, which will be established very soon, to work collaboratively to develop and deliver the next stage of measures. This significant package of amendments represents a uniquely Scottish solution to tackle some of the most pressing issues faced by some of our most vulnerable young people. Not only is it a huge step forward for Scottish teenagers in care, it is groundbreaking in policy terms. And I'm very proud of these amendments, and I want to put on record, Convener, my thanks to the committee for their role in bringing many of the issues tackled in this bill to the fore, and not least the inquiry that we debated last year. I would also like to acknowledge the effort and commitment shown by all the sectoral representatives, particularly Aberlour, Barnardo's and Who Cares Scotland, also Celsius, local government contacts and our looked after young people themselves, who collectively and separately worked with us to identify the most appropriate and realistic way forward against challenging financial circumstances. But now I want to turn to set out more specifically what my amendments seek to achieve. Amendments 308, 309, 314 clarify who is eligible for corporate parenting support by replacing references to being over school age or ceasing to be of school age with references to at least 16 years of age or on the person's 16th birthday, and adding a new order-making power subject to the affirmative procedure for Scottish ministers to extend support to specified descriptions of young people who were formerly but are no longer looked after by a local authority. This is with the intention of extending the categories of young people who would be eligible. Amendment 348 removes the reference to persons being over school age and conveys eligibility for assessment for aftercare support to anyone who leaves care at the age of 16 or above. This ensures those who might enter care at a later age, for example 15, and who leave care at 16, would be eligible. It aligns corporate parenting eligibility in Section 51 with Section 60 on aftercare. We also propose order-making powers for Scottish ministers to specify additional descriptions of persons formerly but no longer looked after by a local authority, who will then be eligible for aftercare support. This means that as soon as practicable, we will bring forward secondary legislation to extend the measures to additional cohorts of young people. Now, it's appropriate to attach affirmative procedures to such orders to give Parliament the appropriate level of scrutiny to debate the merits and affirm any changes thought necessary. As I mentioned earlier, details of any additional cohorts of those eligible to corporate parenting and aftercare support are still to be worked out by the expert group. However, I want to emphasise the Government's commitment is to widen the current groups of young people who are eligible. Therefore, we can't support Liam MacArthur's Amendment 394 as it introduces too broad an entitlement for aftercare support at this point in time, one that could not realistically be met with the current infrastructure. The expert group will provide ministers with realistic recommendations as to the most appropriate timing and categories of additional cohorts of children who should be entitled to this support. Now, we acknowledge the need to immediately extend entitlement to stay in care to those who are 16-year-old and wish to stay in their placement. Therefore, Amendment 353 inserts a new Section 26A into the 1995 Act to specify who is eligible for continuing care. Defines continuing care, sets out the conditions under which the duty would not apply, and sets out the circumstances under which the duty might cease. The effect of this is that any child who is in care at 16 years old and then ceases to be looked after will have the right to stay in their current kinship care, foster care or residential placement, subject to certain exemptions. We also propose order-making powers to allow Scottish ministers to modify new Section 26A to vary the situations in which the duty to provide continuing care either does not apply or ceases to apply. There are also order-making powers to specify the upper age limit of eligible persons and the period of time for which the local authority's duty to provide the care lasts. The last two powers will enable us to roll out the continuing care entitlement to additional cohorts of young people in a measured way over the coming years. We've suggested these be subject to affirmative procedures to give Parliament, again, the appropriate level of scrutiny to debate the merits and to make any changes that are deemed to be necessary. Amendment 350 in my name provides for the notification of deaths of those persons to whom the local authority were providing aftercare support under Section 29 of the 1995 Act at the time of their death. As I said earlier, it's important that lessons are learned to ensure, as far as possible, that services are doing their utmost for all our young people who have been in care. And that replicates a similar provision for the notifications of deaths of looked after children currently contained in Regulation 6 of the Looked After Children Scotland Regs 2009. We will also revise the existing guidance from 2007 to child protection committees to include the death of a young person receiving aftercare in the suggested criteria for child protection committees to consider when deciding whether or not to conduct a significant case review. So I hope this gives the committee a level of detail on those amendments that is helpful to meet the commitments of the magnitude will require flexibility to fully develop the policy, which will require extensive consultation with the care sector and care leavers about the precise parameters of the entitlements, and to work with local government on how best to fund the extension of that support. Now, turning now though to Liam MacArthur's remaining Amendment 395. We don't feel it's necessary, as there is already an existing procedure in place to allow aggrieved persons to appeal against local authority decisions under Section 29 of the 1995 Act. The Support and Assistance of Young People Leaving Care Scotland Regs 2003 already makes provisions allowing persons to appeal against local authority decisions. And it's likely that these regulations will have to be amended in consequence of Section 60 of the Bill, which will provide an opportunity to ensure all measures are clarified. In addition, a review of the complaints procedures provided for by Section 5B of the Social Work Scotland Act 1968 is currently underway. Regulation 16.2 of the 2003 regulations provides that all complaints, representations or appeals not falling within Regulation 16.1 shall be dealt with in accordance with the complaints procedure established under Section 5B of the 1968 Act. So as such, while some stakeholders may wish us to go further, we feel that the existing appeals procedures and our post-bill review of the current regulations is sufficient to address the needs of care leavers in this regard. So in summary, I ask that you support the amendments in my name within this group. And again, Convener, I want to reiterate my thanks to the committee for the work they did in helping us to set out these amendments, which have been described as making Scotland world leading.
Thank you very much, Minister. Can I call Liam MacArthur to speak to Amendment 394 and other amendments in the group?
Thank you, Convener. I'm very pleased indeed to see the changes the Scottish Government is proposing in terms of the provision of aftercare for those who have been through the care system. While I was happy to welcome the proposals contained in the bill originally, it was clear at that stage that a number of important deficiencies remained. Failure to address those would not have made the bill a bad bill in relation to aftercare, but it certainly would have represented a missed opportunity. It is therefore encouraging to see that the Government has indeed listened to the concerns raised by me, by other committee colleagues at stage one, and to the very powerful evidence from Bernardo's, Aberlour, Who Cares, and crucially by care leavers themselves about where improvements needed to be made. Although I note COSLA's submission to this evidence session does point to the need to take great care to ensure the measures that are being introduced are fully and properly funded. Removing the arbitrary eligibility criteria for access to aftercare is particularly welcome and will ensure that these provisions benefit more of those who actually need it. Though I'd welcome the Minister's view on how we might go about ensuring that those currently leaving the care system don't fall through the net. The number, as I understand it, of those are likely to be very, very small, but their expectations will have been raised. It would be nice to think that they would not be left on the wrong side of an arbitrary deadline. Enabling a return to care up to the age of 26 is also very welcome, reflecting, I think, more fairly the opportunity that exists for other young adults and which will hopefully provide reassurance, confidence and support for those care leavers who need it. Again, it would be interesting to hear the Minister set out how what is envisaged under these amendments might be tapered to ensure we don't create another cliff edge, this time at the age of 26. And also, I think, importantly, to reflect the fact that we are here talking about young adults whose rights and needs must be balanced with other children and young people within the care system. Briefly, in relation to my own amendments in this grouping, 394 seeks to address the point I've already referred to about an arbitrary cut-off point for eligibility. Amendment 395 reflects another concern that was raised at stage one, namely the absence of an adequate mechanism for allowing decisions made by local authorities in terms of ongoing care and aftercare to be effectively questioned or appealed. While the former does appear to be adequately covered by the Minister's amendments in this grouping, and therefore I will not be moving it, I'm less sure the point about appeals is, and despite the existing provisions referred to by the Minister in their opening remarks, stakeholders clearly believe that what is in place at the moment is inadequate, and therefore, perhaps in winding up, if she were indicating a willingness to discuss this further ahead of stage 3, again, I would be minded to withdraw the amendment 395 in my name for now. However, my thanks again to Bernardo's, to Aberlour, to Who Cares, and of course the young care leavers themselves who spoke so passionately and eloquently about what they felt needed to happen to improve care and outcomes for those who find themselves in care. I believe we've gone some considerable way in responding to those pleas, and I congratulate the Minister on her own efforts in that regard. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. Can I call Claire Adamson?
Thank you, Convener. When I reflect on the very first inquiry that the committee did into the educational attainments of young people, I think all of the committee at that time felt a shared frustration that the problems and the poor outcomes were well recognised, but that no significant progress had been made in tackling some of the issues for young people in care. And there's always a concern as a politician that you're involved in an inquiry and that you will put forward proposals, but they will not lead to significant change. However, in this case, when I look at the amendments in this group being moved by the Minister, I have to agree with her term of groundbreaking. I absolutely do believe these are groundbreaking and will make significant changes to the lives of young people in care. So I thank her for her words about the committee's work on this issue, but and also identify myself with the comments of Liam MacArthur about the stakeholders and young care leavers. And I have to say that the young care leavers evidence has been absolutely key to me in my deliberation of a lot of this bill, not least of which these particular issues about support, but also the ones just previously debated regarding continuing relationships between family relationships for young people. And I do, along with Liam MacArthur, and I'm sure with the rest of the committee, thank them for their consideration and in contributing to both those inquiries. So I'm delighted to support the amendments for the Minister in this group, and I also look forward to her summing up regarding the issues raised by Liam MacArthur.
Call Liz Smith.
Thank you, Convener. Can I just add my wholehearted support to these amendments? I don't think any of us who sat through what was substantial and compelling evidence on this issue could possibly find any reason to disagree with them. So I warmly welcome the Government's amendments, and I'm interested to hear what Mr MacArthur said about his own 2 amendments. In principle, I certainly agree that there have been issues where there are concerns among some of the stakeholders, but the Government, I think, has taken that on board. So I will be supporting these amendments.
Thank you very much. Can I call George Adam?
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I've got my full support for these amendments as well, because it's great to see these changes come into place, because we had 2 inquiries, and during that time we actually saw, I think, the compelling evidence was brought by the young people themselves and how they went through, as Liam MacArthur has already said. And it's good as a politician to actually see the process working and actually moving things forward for people's lives, because at the end of the day, regardless of our political beliefs and disagreements, we all get involved for the reason to actually try and make changes in our local communities and throughout the country. So I can see that this has made that big difference, and obviously this is offering the help and support that's needed. And as Liam said already, I think some of the charities who were involved and gave evidence and worked with us on this, the 2 inquiries, Who Cares Scotland, Bernardo's and Aberlour, have to be congratulated as well, because they've highlighted the issues, and it shows many of the young people who are possibly here today and were involved in the process that politics can work.
Thank you very much. Before I bring in the Minister, can I just add a few comments of my own to the discussion? Can I begin by welcoming these amendments from the Government? Perhaps it shows that parliamentary committees can work successfully in pushing the Government to a place that certainly the committee agreed we should be. So we're very pleased about that, and I think I speak for all members in that the evidence we received over 2 years and in 2 inquiries certainly led us to believe that this was a necessary change So we are delighted that the Government has agreed and has brought forward these amendments. Can I join other members in thanking Bernardo Zaberlauer and Who Cares Scotland for their effort and their forbearance over the last couple of years in helping us to get to this point. I think the work of the 2 inquiries that this committee undertook have shown to be well worthwhile given this outcome. And can I, particularly, as others have done, thank the young people who took part in the inquiry and outside of the committee as well in some of our visits. That really was some of the most important and compelling evidence and some of the most important and compelling discussions that took place during those inquiries in helping us come to the view that it was necessary for the Government to support this kind of change. And kind of finally, I certainly welcomed the Minister's announcement. I think it was a week past on Monday about this. It would have been helpful if it had been a week past on Saturday, because myself and a member of Who Cares Scotland were on the radio that morning discussing this very issue, so it would have been helpful if it had been 48 hours earlier. But thank you very much, Minister, for announcing it anyway. And I know that the whole committee is very appreciative of the work that's been done by both the outside groups and by the Government on this area. And can I call the Minister to wind up?
Thank you, Convener. And again, just want to reiterate how proud that we are of these amendments. And again, thank the work of the committee. I think, as George Adams says, it has shown how politics can work when we can all come together and make sure that we can get maximise the impact of this bill and this opportunity that the bill presents. We'd also like to again thank the sectoral representatives, Bernardo Zaberlauer and Who Cares Scotland, amongst a wider kind of arena of representatives who have done so much to ensure that we get this part of the bill absolutely right for young looked after care leavers. And again, I would like to put on record my thanks to the young looked after people themselves who gave so much of their time and personal experience to help us identify the most appropriate and realistic way forward with this bill. And I think many of them, or some of them anywhere at least, are in the committee room today. And I just think that they have left an enormously positive legacy for future care leavers in Scotland. So we have been very pleased with the feedback and we've really again welcomed the support that you've given as a committee to these amendments. Now, turning to some of the issues that were raised, particularly by Liam MacArthur, in relation to a new cliff edge emerging with these amendments. Now, we don't want a new cliff edge for our young looked after children, and this bill is also about changing culture, about how we are much more supportive of care leavers as they enter an independent living. So we are wanting to make sure that they are supported as fully as they can be, that there is no new cliff edge emerging, and we are wanting to make sure that our expert group, which we also announced at the time that you described, Convener, will consider which other cohorts of children should be eligible for corporate parenting and aftercare. And that should ensure that we get that right and that support is there for them. In relation to his other amendment around appeals, the regulations that I outlined in my opening remarks already include appeals in Regulation 17 to 20 of those 2003 regulations set out the procedures that are to be followed for those appeals. So I hope, Convener, that gives some reassurance to Liam MacArthur that we're not wanting any new cliff edges to emerge, that the expert group will be looking at new cohorts as they emerge through the progression of this bill, and that the appeals are covered within the existing regulations as well. So thank you, Convener, again. Thank you for the committee's work.
Excuse me, thank you very much. The question is that Amendment 308 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. Can I call Amendment 309 in the name of the Minister? Already debated with Amendment 308. Minister, to move formally. The question is that Amendment 309 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We're agreed. The question is that Section 51 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. Can I call Amendment 328 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 316 on day 2? Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Not moved.
Not moved. Can I call Amendment 252 in the name of Jane Baxter, already debated with Amendment 216 on day 1? Jane Baxter, to move or not move?
Not move.
And it's not moved. Can I call Amendment 329 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 178 on day 2? Liam MacArthur, to move or not move? Not moved. Thank you. Can I call Amendment 253 in the name of Jane Baxter, already debated with Amendment 216 on day 1? Jane Baxter, to move or not move?
Not move.
Thank you. Can I call Amendment 347 in the name of Jane Baxter, already debated with Amendment 303? Jane Baxter, to move or not move?
In light of the Minister's comments, not move.
Thank you. Can I call Amendment 310 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment already debated with Amendment 303. Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 310 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. The question is that Section 52 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The question is that Sections 53 and 54 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I call Amendment 330 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 316 on day 2. Liam MacArthur to move or not move? It's not moved. Can I call Amendment 331 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 316 on day 2. Liam MacArthur to move or not move? Thank you. The question is that Section 55 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The question is that Section 56 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I call Amendment 115 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 95 on day 1. Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 115 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. The question is that Section 57 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Can I call Amendment 116 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 95 on day 1. Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 116 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. The question is that Section 58 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The question is that Section 59 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Can I call Amendment 348 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 308? Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 348 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. Can I call Amendment 394 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 308? Liam MacArthur to move or not move? That's not moved. Can I call Amendment 349 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 308? Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 349 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. Can I call Amendment 332 in the name of Liam MacArthur, grouped with other amendments as shown in the groupings? Can I point out that if Amendment 354 is agreed to, I cannot call Amendments 185, 334, 186 and 335 because of preemption. And I have to advise members that Amendments 184, 187, 188 and 189 are direct alternatives for, respectively, Amendments 390, 391, 392 and 393. Liam MacArthur to move Amendment 332 and speak to amendments in the group.
Thank you. Convener, my amendments in this grouping cover a couple of general areas of concern highlighted at stage 1, and I'll turn to those in a second. I am, though, conscious, as you yourself have pointed out, Convener, that the Minister's Amendment 354 perhaps renders redundant a number of my own proposed changes, and I'm certainly happy to accept that. Nevertheless, having concluded my remarks in relation to the previous grouping by extolling the efforts of the Minister, I do once again find myself wondering why it was that I bothered meeting with her and officials on 2 separate occasions to discuss possible amendments. It seems to have been rather a one-way process in terms of the exchange of information. In any event, Amendments 332 and 333 further reflect the excellent evidence provided to us by a broad coalition of experts behind the Putting the Baby in the Bathwater report. Amendment 333 reflects the reality that a disproportionately high percentage of care leavers become parents at an earlier age. Many of those intended to be beneficiary of this bill's aftercare provisions will already have children of their own. Thus, it's likely they will need assistance and support beyond that for eligible individuals. It would also be good policy and good practice for those care leavers who are still only prospective parents to be far better supported than I think is the norm at present in terms of understanding their options and the implications of their choices about if and or when to have children of their own. Evidence indicates that the children of care leavers are more likely to become looked after themselves and are more likely to have additional support needs. The bill's excellent aftercare provisions should therefore promote preventative spending and efforts to prevent current care leavers' needs from becoming intergenerational ones. Although the main issues will and should be addressed by statutory guidance, it would help, I think, to have a reference point on the face of the bill. This will improve planning for and working with care leavers holistically, and I would encourage the Minister to make a commitment to work with the report's coalition in preparing regulations and guidance in due course. My later amendments 184 to 189 address a concern at the terminology as originally set out in the bill, which could create confusion about the support potentially available. While the definition of counselling services appears thankfully to be fairly broad, it does, I think, suffer from perceptions of what it means in practice, and therefore a change to refer to early intervention services, I think, better reflects what is actually intended by the bill. I note that Colin Beattie has very similar amendments. Who knows? Perhaps his meetings with the Minister were more of a two-way process than mine. And I will support his in the event of mine falling. But I draw the attention of the committee to the fact that Children First's certain preference is for the term early intervention rather than the more, I think, ambiguous reference to relevant services. For now, however, Convener, I have pleasure in moving Amendment 332 in my name. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I call Colin Beattie to speak to Amendment 390 and other amendments in the group?
Thank you, Convener. As Liam MacArthur said, Amendments 390, 91, 92, 93 amend take out the word counselling and exchange the word relevant services for this. And the purpose of these amendments is to address concerns that the term counselling services itself might be a bit restrictive and might not cover the range of services that the local authorities might consider. The issue of counselling services as a generic term has actually been raised by a number of stakeholders, and there's been some discussion as to what the most appropriate term would be. And obviously circumstances and appropriate supports will vary from child to child and change over time. So changing the terminology to a wider term to relevant services seems very much more appropriate. Taking Amendment 354A, which amends the Minister's Amendment 354, and I welcome the Minister's amendment, actually adds to that amendment insofar as it gives a certain definition of relevant service and gives some more definition as to what the terminology actually means. I take on board that Liam MacArthur has sought to do something very similar in substituting early intervention for counselling services, but probably that wouldn't be so appropriate, as in order to receive the counselling services under the bill, the family would need to seek help and be willing to participate in the service provided, and it's important that this is seen as a form of support rather than a form of state intervention. So I think on that basis the amendments that I'm proposing would meet the needs of creating a better definition of relevant service versus counselling service.
Thank you very much. Can I call the Minister to speak to Amendment 354 and other amendments in the group? Minister.
Thank you, Convener. And again, we have listened to the members and took on board the messages from members as through the meetings that we've had, and as we've certainly moved forward to shape and hone the bill. And I'm sorry that Liam MacArthur didn't find the meetings useful. I wonder if maybe that's more to do with the fact for the first meeting he was 45 minutes late for that one. Nevertheless, we'll continue to work with members as we progress through the rest of the stages of the bill. Now, turning to the intention behind Amendments 332 and 333, we can't support those amendments. The Scottish Government is aiming to ensure that all care leavers have access to the most appropriate support according to their needs, just as other young people typically receive from their parents. Local authorities are under a duty in Section 29(5) of the Children's Scotland Act 1995 to carry out an assessment of the needs of each care leaver to whom they have a duty under Section 29(1), and also to assess the needs of all of those that make an application to them for aftercare support under Section 29(2), whether or not they are parents or prospective parents. This assessment will be conducted in accordance with GIRFEC principles, and all services, adult and child, will cooperate and deliver the best aftercare support possible to safeguard the well-being of all vulnerable young care leavers. Furthermore, we believe that including pregnancy and parenthood in Part 8 of aftercare has the potential to cause unnecessary confusion over who within children's services is responsible for the child or a care leaver. Crucially, by putting this on the face of the bill and requiring through care and aftercare teams to take responsibility for babies and very young children, we may create unintended consequences around the level of qualification and training that's required. As a consequence of the bill, there will be an extensive update required of all guidance relating to through care and aftercare. We will undertake to ensure every effort is made to provide clarification and more detailed guidance over the expected level of service required under these new provisions. Amendments 184 to 189 replace the term counselling with early intervention throughout Part 9, which requires local authorities to provide such services to eligible children and their families. Also, Colin Beattie's amendments 390, 354A, 391, 392, 393 seeks to replace the term counselling services with relevant services throughout Part 9. Now, we accept that there are concerns from stakeholders that the terms counselling services may be too restrictive, and therefore we accept the need to change that term. And we've considered, absolutely genuinely have considered both sets of competing amendments and considered those which best reflect the policy intention are Mr Beattie's, and accordingly we support those amendments in favour of those set out by Mr MacArthur. The term early intervention, while universally accepted in public service terminology as a good thing, is not appropriate when used in this context, as it could imply a statutory or compulsory intervention, which is not the purpose of this part of the bill. The aim is to secure the willing involvement of families in preventing a child from becoming unnecessarily looked after, and therefore we can't support Liam's amendments in this group. Relevant services, as suggested by Colin Beattie, captures a wider range of services, and therefore we believe that that's much more appropriate. A further government amendment to section 61, if accepted, will place the eligibility test for the services on the face of the bill and will make it clear that authorities are to provide such services as will help prevent a child from becoming looked after. Further detail as to the types of services that could be provided under this provision will be contained within secondary legislation, which will be consulted on. Taken together, these amendments will widen the term to require local authorities to provide services to eligible children and their families where the child is at risk of becoming looked after, which are not restricted to services involving counselling and counsellors. The circumstances of individual families will vary greatly, and the type of services required by them will also vary and may evolve over time. Therefore, these changes should mean provision is wide enough to ensure that local authorities can provide a wide range of services to meet those various needs and those different and varying circumstances. Now, the amendments in my name do a number of things. They ensure that an eligible child and a qualifying person in relation to such a child are eligible for relevant services under Part 9. This is to ensure that it is clear that support can be provided to various members of a child's family or to the child themselves, and not just to their parent or a person with parental rights and responsibilities in relation to the child, in order to avoid the risk of the child becoming looked after. They ensure that eligible child is defined on the face of the bill rather than in an order. This is in response to concerns about a lack of detail in relation to this part of the bill. A child will be eligible if they are at risk of becoming looked after if relevant services are not provided. This does not have to be an imminent risk. It may well be some way in the future, as the support to be provided under Part 9 is intended to be about early intervention to offset or reduce the risk of that child eventually or becoming looked after. It will be for the local authorities to judge on a case-by-case basis whether a child meets that test, and it's intended that guidance will be issued by ministers to assist local authorities to make that assessment. Further, there is an order-making power in section 62(1)(a) and (b) to allow further provision to be made in relation to how the test is to be applied. In addition, the eligibility test will be capable of being amended by order if it is considered that that is required. The amendments also ensure that an eligible pregnant woman and qualifying persons in relation to such a woman, the father of her child, a person who she is married to in a civil partnership with or otherwise related to, or with whom she is living, or a person who the local authority considers will, when the pregnant woman gives birth, become a qualifying person in relation to the child, are all eligible for services under this part. A pregnant woman will be considered an eligible pregnant woman if the local authority considers that she is going to give birth to a child who will be an eligible child. This is in direct response to the Baby in the Bathwater Coalition request, and we agree that expectant parents would be a good target for an early intervention approach and have produced these amendments accordingly. So Amendment 386 is a technical amendment to clarify what is meant by a child becoming looked after in parts 9 and 10. So in summary, we can't support the MacArthur's amendments. However, we support Colin Beattie's and ask that you support the amendments that are laid out in my name.
No other members have asked to intervene at this stage, because so can I call Liam MacArthur to wind up and to indicate whether I wish to press or withdraw his amendment.
Thank you very much. Convener, can I, in relation to the amendments to do with counselling, thank both Colin Beattie and the Minister for their comments. I think Colin Beattie was absolutely right in pointing to concerns around the rather restrictive nature and the potential lack of coverage that would arise from the original wording in the bill. I note the comments that he made about the potential for early intervention to be seen as too state interventionist rather than around the support that would be provided. I'm certainly not going to wrestle them to the floor in terms of amendments. I will be pressing mine, but as I indicated earlier, I would be happy to support his amendments, which clearly indicate the benefits to be derived from turning up on time to meetings with the ministers, to the point where actually not only do you get ministerial approval for your amendments, you get an invitation to amend the ministers' amendments. In relation to amendments 332, 333, again, I note the minister's points about the genesis of some of her amendments and the importance of putting the baby in the bathwater report and recommendations in arriving at those amendments. I still would welcome, I think, a commitment from the Minister to work with the experts behind that group in the development of regulations and guidance. Subsequently, I'll be pressing them. I'll invite the Minister to...
Intend to work with all expert groups and stakeholders in the development of guidance and can give that commitment.
Right. On that basis, I won't be moving Amendment 332 in my name. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't catch the end of that.
I won't be moving Amendment 332 in my name.
You have to withdraw it.
Sorry.
Liam MacArthur seeks to withdraw Amendment 332. Are members content? Okay. Can I call Amendment 333 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 332? Liam MacArthur to move or not move?
Move.
I call Amendment 395 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 308. Liam MacArthur to move or not move?
I'm not sure I was satisfied with the response to the
You
Minister.
just have to move or not move.
So I'll move.
The question is that Amendment 395 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Can those members who wish to support Amendment 395 please show? Thank you. Those against? The result of the vote on Amendment 395, there were 3 votes in favour and 6 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendments 350, 351 and 352, all in the name of the Minister and all previously debated? Can I invite the Minister to move Amendments 350 to 352 en bloc? Can I ask whether any member objects to a single question being put on Amendments 350 to 352? No member has objected. Therefore, the question is that Amendments 350 to 352 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. The question is that Section 60 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I call Amendment 353 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 308? Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 353 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. Can I call Amendment 184 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 332? Liam MacArthur to move or not move?
Not moved. Oh, no. Moved, sorry. That one's moved.
Moved. The question is that Amendment 184 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're not all agreed. Therefore, there will be a division. Can I ask those members who wish to support Amendment 184 to please show? Thank you. Those against? The result of the vote on Amendment 184, there were 4 votes in favour, 5 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 390 in the name of Colin Beattie, already debated with Amendment 332? Colin Beattie to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 390 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. Can I call Amendment 354 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 332? And can I remind members that if Amendment 354 is agreed to, I cannot call Amendments 185, 334, 186 and 335 because of preemption. Minister to move formally. Can I call Amendment 354A in the name of Colin Beattie, already debated with 332? Colin Beattie to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 354A be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. The question is that Amendment 354 as amended be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are. The question is that Section 61 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I call Amendment 187 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 332? Liam MacArthur to move or not move? Not moved. Call Amendment 391 in the name of Colin Beattie, already debated with Amendment 332. Colin Beattie to move or not move? The question is that Amendment 391 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. Can I call Amendment 355 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 332? Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 355 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. Can I call Amendment 356 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 332? Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 356 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. Call Amendment 188 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 332. Liam MacArthur to move or not move? Not moved. Call Amendment 392 in the name of Colin Beattie, already debated with Amendment 332. Colin Beattie to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 392 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. Can I call Amendment 189 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 332. Liam MacArthur to move or not move? Not moved. Can I call Amendment 393 in the name of Colin Beattie, already debated with Amendment 332? Colin Beattie to move or not move?
Move.
That's moved. The question is that Amendment 393 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. The question is that Section 62 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I call Amendment 357 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 332? Minister to move formally. The question is that Amendment 357 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. The question is that Section 63 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I call Amendment 396 in the name of Jane Baxter, grouped with Amendments 397, 400, 401, 402, 403 and 404? And can I point out that Amendment 397 is preempted by Amendment 363 in the next group, which is persons eligible to receive kinship care assistance? Jane Baxter to move Amendment 396 and speak to other amendments in the group.
Thanks, Convener. By strengthening the commitment by the Scottish Ministers to set out in secondary legislation the expectations of local authorities, these amendments will provide a route by which the Scottish Ministers will ensure that kinship carers receive adequate support. As we know, secondary legislation is vital in terms of setting out the detail by which kinship carer orders and assistance will work, and therefore I seek stronger measures to ensure these must, not just may, be enacted. Currently, there is a wide variation of allowances paid to formal kinship carers across the 32 local authorities, resulting in a postcode lottery of support for kinship. I'd be keen to hear from the Minister today that whether at stage 3 the Scottish Government will consider setting out specified rates of payments to be payable in the provision of financial support, and to require local authorities to pay at least that rate to all qualifying persons. On the subject of payments, many kinship carers embark on this role with little or no awareness of their rights in relation to the benefits system. Accurate and timely advice regarding benefits entitlement is essential in order that kinship carers are not financially disadvantaged and are able to make an informed decision about their future. A consultation by Children First, with over 250 kinship carers for the Scottish Government Financial Review, found that many kinship carers are receiving a range of different benefits, with many not knowing what they are entitled to or who to ask. Ensuring that financial support includes advice will help many kinship carers to maximise their income and therefore mitigate any child poverty, and Amendment 402 aims to do this. Finally, Amendment 404 in the amendments being debated in this group is to ensure that local authorities will review the kinship care assistance provided to kinship care families. At the moment, local authorities will only review this if an eligible child's status changes. If an eligible child is in kinship care, for example, for 6 years, their support needs may change over those years, and it's not the eligibility which has changed, but potentially the qualifying person and child's support needs. Currently, there is no right for a qualifying person who has obtained a kinship care order to ask for this review of support. This amendment will enable ministers to include a provision for how or when a kinship carer who has obtained an order can request a review. Accordingly, I move the amendment in my name.
Thank you. Can I call Liz Smith?
Convener, I have a lot of sympathy with the points that Jane Baxter has just raised, not least because I think one of the other compelling evidence sessions we heard was about the kinship care, and this Parliament must never forget that it's come back to the institution many times, so I don't really think that as yet we are doing the best possible job for kinship carers. I have a little concern, however, about the articulation in the choice of wording of this bill as to whether it articulates with other legislation. So I'm interested to hear the Minister's response to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No other members indicated they wish to contribute, so can I call the Minister to speak to these amendments in these groups?
Thank you, Convener. Amendment 396 would replace may with must in section 64(2) of the bill in order to ensure that Scottish ministers must specify descriptions of kinship carers assistant by order. Amendments 400, 401 amend section 66(1), remove the words which may be and replace includes with must include to require ministers, when making an order under section 64(2), to specify that kinship care assistance must include the categories of assistance specified in section 66(1). Amendment 403 would replace may with must in section 66(3) in order to ensure that Scottish ministers must by orders make certain provisions about kinship care assistance, such as when or how kinship care assistance is to be provided. Now, we are aware that there is concern about the variation in the level of support offered to kinship carers across Scotland. We believe that these amendments are intended to help prevent that variation. However, we do not consider these amendments would result in local authorities providing a uniform level of support to kinship carers. Whilst we are sympathetic to the aims of the amendments, absolutely sympathetic to some of the things that Jane Baxter has outlined, we are also aware that circumstances of individuals and the type of level of assistance they might require will vary widely. So given this, we don't think it is appropriate to be so prescriptive on the face of the bill about the type and level of support to be provided. We consider that the actual effect of these amendments is to ensure that ministers must exercise their order-making power in section 64(2), and that in doing so, the assistance they specify must include the categories of assistance specified in section 66(1). The effect of the amendments would also be to ensure that ministers must exercise their order-making powers in section 66(3) to make provision about when or how kinship care assistance is to be provided, for example. These amendments are therefore, we believe, unnecessary. Ministers fully intend to exercise their powers under these sections to make orders which specify descriptions of kinship care assistance which local authorities must make available to those eligible for it. And these orders will include the categories of assistance specified in section 66(1) and the type of provision specified in section 66(3). In legislation, and as I think maybe Liz Smith was alluding to, the preference is also to use the word may in order-making powers, because ultimately this will probably be a matter for the Parliament at that time that power is being exercised. Using the word must would not necessarily ensure that any order made by ministers would become law. It would be for the Parliament to decide whether or not to pass any secondary legislation made by the Government. Amendment 397 would amend section 64(4) to provide that the Scottish ministers must, instead of may, by order specify a description of an eligible child. However, my amendment 363, if accepted by the committee, would place the description of an eligible child on the face of the bill, so this amendment would no longer be necessary. Amendment 402 seeks to amend section 66(1) to provide that an order under section 64(2) must include the provision of advice or information about how financial support may be obtained as one of the categories of assistance specified. And we also consider that to be unnecessary. No other specific forms of kinship care assistance are specified on the face of the bill, and we intend to describe them in secondary legislation and have an order-making power at section 64(2), which allows us to do that, and we will consult before making any such provisions. It is also intended that guidance will be issued to local authorities in relation to the kinship care assistance they will be required to provide, and we will also be consulting widely on that. And in reply to Jane Baxter's points about financial consistency across Scotland, we are currently awaiting the outcomes of a financial review. Amendment 404 inserts a new provision into section 66(3) to ensure that there is a mechanism available for reviewing the kinship care assistance being made available to a person, and when or how a person to whom assistance is made available may request such a review. We consider that in practical terms, a review of the assistance being made available to a person would be carried out by authorities in the review as to whether a child continues to be eligible in terms of section 66(3)(c). Further, it is considered that this and provision about how a person can request a review of their assistance could be, in any event, be covered by provisions made under section 66(3)(d), which enables ministers to make provisions about such other matters about the provision of kinship care as the Scottish ministers consider appropriate. We will be working with stakeholders to ensure that any provision made under section 66(3) are as comprehensive as necessary. So for those reasons, we don't support the amendments in Jane Baxter's name in this group, and I hope, Convener, that it was helpful to explain the legislative preference and the use of the words that we have chosen within the bill, and to give that clarity to Jane Baxter when she's considering whether she presses her amendments.
Thank you, Minister. Can I call Jane Baxter to wind up and to indicate whether she wishes to press or withdraw her amendment?
Thanks, Convener. And thank you to the Minister for her comments. I think this issue's not going away, and I've not heard anything from the Minister this morning that makes me reassured about the intentions around this issue. And in the absence of the financial review, I think I'm going to proceed with my amendments and press them.
The question is that Amendment 396 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not all agreed, therefore there will be a division. Those members who wish to support Amendment 396, please show. Thank you. Those against? Thank you. The result of the vote on Amendment 396, there were 2 votes in favour and 7 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. I call Amendment 358 in the name of the Minister, grouped with other amendments as shown in the groupings. Minister to move Amendment 358 and speak to other amendments in the group.
Move Amendment 358 in my name. Amendments 358, 359, 360 and 361 clarify 2 things. Firstly, that kinship care orders subsist only until the eligible child reaches the age of 16, and therefore that those persons specified in section 64(3)(a) to C are only entitled to kinship care assistance until the child attains the age of 16. And secondly, that a child who was subject to a kinship care order prior to attaining the age of 16 is still eligible to receive assistance until they are 18. This is made clear in the face of the bill for the avoidance of any misunderstanding. Amendments 362, 364 and 365 will remove the exclusion on a guardian being a qualifying person and therefore from being eligible to receive kinship care assistance under section 64. We've considered the views of stakeholders on this issue and agree that the status of guardians is not sufficiently different to that of kinship carers to justify their exclusion from being eligible for kinship care assistance. It was not our intention to discourage people from applying for guardianship orders where it would be in the interest of the child, which could be an unintended consequence of exclusion. Therefore, I've brought forward these amendments to ensure that guardians, whether court-appointed or appointed by parents in their will, for example, and the children they care for are not at a disadvantage to kinship carers and children in kinship care. The bill, as introduced at stage 1, provides that kinship care assistance can be provided to specific categories of people where there is an eligible child in terms of section 64(3), and that the description of an eligible child will be specified by order, section 64(4). Amendment 363 puts the definition of eligible child in the face of the bill rather than in an order, and that's in response to concerns over a perceived lack of detail, as I've said, in the bill, despite those reassurances. The test is whether a child is at risk of becoming looked after if kinship care assistance is not provided, and there is an order-making power allowed in ministers to specify other descriptions of a child as eligible if this is considered required at a later date. Amendment 389 amends section 77 to provide that such an order will be subject to affirmative procedure. It will be for local authorities to judge on a case-by-case basis whether a child meets that test, and it is also intended that guidance will be issued to help local authorities make that assessment. The order-making power in section 66(3)(a) and (b) allows further provision to be made in relation to how that test would be applied. Amendments 367 and 368 make minor technical amendments to section 66(3) required in consequence of Amendment 363, which places the eligibility test on the face of the bill. Amendment 366 provides that a civil partner of a person related to an eligible child can be a qualifying person for a kinship care order, and that's a technical amendment to correct an oversight in the bill at introduction and to ensure compliance with equalities and human rights legislation. Amendment 369 inserts a definition of parent into section 67 so that the term, when used in Part 10 of the bill, has the same meaning as in Part 1 of the Children's Scotland Act 1995. This removes a potential area for misunderstanding. Parents are not eligible for kinship care orders under section 65. However, kinship carers can have parental rights and responsibilities for a child, and that might lead to some confusion about their status. We must be clear that despite having those rights and responsibilities, they are not considered to be parents in this context and are still therefore eligible to obtain a kinship care order if they are a qualifying person in terms of section 65(2). Jane Baxter's amendments 398 and 399 seeks to add to the categories of person that can be a qualifying person for the purposes of obtaining a kinship care order for those with a pre-existing relationship to or connection with the child, and to remove the order-making power that allows ministers to specify such other relationships to or connection with the child as is considered appropriate. The section is drafted in a way which ensures that we cover all eventualities and do not exclude people from being eligible to be kinship carers unnecessarily. We understand the concern that section 65(2) is too wide and could result in someone with no effective relationship with the child becoming their kinship carer. However, section 65(2)(c) allows ministers to specify such other relationships to or connections with a child as are considered appropriate, and we intend to consult extensively before making such an order. It would also be for a sheriff to determine whether it is appropriate to grant an order under section 11(1) of the Children's Scotland Act 95, a residence order or a guardianship order to a person, in other words a kinship care order, which we think is sufficient safeguard and meets any concerns about the provision being too widely drawn. Therefore, we consider that these amendments are not necessary. So I ask the committee to support the amendments in my name and to not support amendments 398 and 399.
Thank you, Minister. Can I call Jane Baxter to speak to Amendment 398 and other amendments in the group?
Thank you, Convener. I'll be brief. I'm keen to ensure that in this section we acknowledge the concerns that the wording, as is currently set out in the bill, is too wide, and the importance of a kinship carer being a person who knows the child is recognised. By stipulating a pre-existing relationship, the new provisions would highlight the importance of the child being accommodated with someone who understands their circumstances and background, has an awareness of their needs and is best placed to offer optimum care and support.
Thank you. No other members indicated a wish to contribute at this stage. Minister, do you wish to wind up?
Thank you. Under the bill, ministers by order will be able to specify such other relationships to or connections with a child that are considered appropriate in order to be eligible for a kinship care order. And as I've said, we intend to consult extensively with a wide range of interested parties before making such an order. And it will be for the Sheriff to determine whether it is appropriate to grant an order under section 11(1) of the Scotland Act 95, a residence order or a guardianship order to a person which we think is sufficient safeguard and meets any concerns about section 65(2) being too widely drawn. Therefore, I consider that the amendments in Jane Baxter's name are necessary.
The question is that Amendment 358 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are. Can I call Amendments 359 to 362, all in the name of the Minister and all previously debated? Can I invite the Minister to move Amendments 359 to 362 en bloc?
Moved en bloc.
Can I ask whether any member objects to a single question being put on Amendments 359 to 362? No members objected. Therefore, the question is that Amendments 359 to 362 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. Can I call Amendment 363 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 358? And can I remind members that if Amendment 363 is agreed to, I cannot call Amendment 397 because of preemption. Minister, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 363 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. The question is that Section 64 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Can I call Amendment 364 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 358? Minister, to move formally. Moved. The question is that Amendment 364 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yeah. Can I call Amendment 398 in the name of Jane Baxter, already debated with Amendment 358? Jane Baxter, to move or not move? Move. That's moved. The question is that Amendment 398 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Not. Therefore, there will be a division. Can I ask those members who wish to support Amendment 398 to show? Thank you. Those against? The result of the vote on Amendment 398, 3 votes in favour, 6 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 399 in the name of Jane Baxter, already debated with Amendment 358? Jane Baxter, to move or not move? Move. The question is that Amendment 399 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not all agreed. Therefore, there is a division. Those members who wish to support Amendment 399, please vote now. Thank you. Those against? The result of the vote on Amendment 399, there were 3 votes in favour and 6 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 365 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 358? Minister, to move formally. The question is that Amendment 365 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. Can I call Amendment 366 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 358? Minister, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 366 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. The question is that section 65 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I call Amendment 400 in the name of Jane Baxter, already debated with Amendment 396? Jane Baxter, to move or not move? The question is that Amendment 400 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not all agreed. Therefore, there is a division. Those members who wish to support Amendment 400, please vote now. Thank you. Those against? The result of the vote on Amendment 400, there were 2 votes in favour, 7 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 401 in the name of Jane Baxter, already debated with Amendment 396? Jane Baxter, to move or not move? The question is that Amendment 401 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not all agreed. Therefore, there will be a division. Can those members who wish to support Amendment 401 please show? Thank you. Those against? Result of the vote on Amendment 401, 2 votes in favour, 7 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 402 in the name of Jane Baxter, already debated with Amendment 396? Jane Baxter, to move or not move? The question is that Amendment 402 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not. Therefore, there will be a division. Can those members who wish to support Amendment 402 please show? Thank you. Those against? Thank you. The result of the vote on Amendment 402, 2 votes in favour, 7 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I call Amendment 403 in the name of Jane Baxter, already debated with Amendment 396? Jane Baxter, to move or not move? Not moved. Can I call Amendment 367 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 358? Minister, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 367 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. Can I call Amendment 368 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 358? Minister, to move formally. The question is that Amendment 368 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. Can I call Amendment 404 in the name of Jane Baxter, already debated with Amendment 396? Jane Baxter, to move or not move?
Move.
That's moved. The question is that Amendment 404 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're not all agreed. Therefore, there will be a division. With those members who wish to support Amendment 404, please vote now. Thank you. Those against? Thank you. The result of the vote on Amendment 404, there were 2 votes in favour, 7 votes against. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. The question is that Section 66 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I call Amendment 369 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 358? The Minister, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 369 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are. The question is that Section 67 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I call Amendment 370 in the name of the Minister, grouped with Amendments 371 to 380? As members have been advised, Amendment 380 has been determined to be an amendment to which Rule 9.12.6b applies. This means that it could, depending on amendments lodged for next week, contribute to causing the bill to require a financial resolution under Rule 9.12.4, which deals with powers to charge fees. Amendment 380 can be debated today, but I intend to end consideration for the day before calling it. How we deal with it at next week's meeting will depend on whether any further amendments dealing with powers to charge fees are lodged and whether a financial resolution is then in place. The Minister to move Amendment 370 and speak to all amendments in the group. Minister.
Thank you, Convener. I move Amendment 370 in my name. Amendments 370, 371 and 372 arose from the Delegated Powers and Law Reform Committee's report at Stage 1 of the Bill. The committee asked the Scottish Government to consider bringing forward amendments to Sections 13A at Stage 2 to make provision about the purpose or intended use of the register in order to inform the broad powers in Section 13A2 to make regulations about the register and the information which it is to contain. We consider that these amendments address the committee's concerns. Amendments 373, 374, 376, 379 and 380 also arose from the Delegated Powers and Law Reforms Committee's report at Stage 1 of the Bill. The committee was concerned that any arrangements which authorise the Scottish Minister's function in respect of Scotland's adoption register to be carried out by a registration organisation and provide for payments to be made to such an organisation should be clear and accessible to those affected by them. They recommended that we should include provisions in the bill requiring ministers to publish details of any organisation they have authorised to carry out ministers' functions in respect of the register and detail of payments that are to be made to that organisation other than by Scottish ministers. Amendments 374 therefore places a requirement on the Scottish ministers to publish any arrangements made by ministers which authorise an organisation to perform their functions in respect of the register. With regard to the committee's concerns about the accessibility of arrangements imposing liability for payment on persons other than Scottish ministers, these amendments go even further to address the committee's concerns and clarify the payment provisions in respect of the register. Amendment 373 makes it clear that any arrangements made by Scottish ministers authorising a registration organisation to run the adoption register may include provision for payments to be made by Scottish ministers to that organisation. Amendment 380 makes new provision for regulations to prescribe fees or payments to be made by adoption agencies in relation to the register, which means that any payment or fees by persons other than Scottish ministers would be set out in subordinate legislation. Amendments 376, 379, 380 bring together all the provisions regarding payments and fees in respect of the register into one section for clarity. We consider that these amendments address the committee's concerns. Concerns have been voiced by BAF and others about the requirement in the bill for parental consent when providing information about a child to Scotland's adoption register. These concerns were highlighted by the committee in its Stage 1 report. Amendments 375 and 377 address those concerns. The amendments do two things. Firstly, they will remove the requirement from the face of the bill for adoption agencies to obtain consent before disclosing certain information to the register. Secondly, they will allow regulations to specify circumstances in which adoption agencies are not to provide information for the register, for example, where consent may be an issue. We consider it best that any circumstances where information is not to be put on the register, such as where consent may be an issue, should be set out together in regulations. As the regulations will be subject to affirmative parliamentary procedure, we consider that this will ensure the appropriate level of scrutiny that this important issue requires. We will work in partnership with key stakeholders, including BAF, when developing these regulations to ensure Scotland's adoption register can operate effectively and without unnecessary delays in finding permanent homes for some of our most vulnerable children. Amendment 378 is a technical amendment ensuring that a register maintained in respect of England, Wales or Northern Ireland referred to in new section 13D2B2 of the 2007 Act, as inserted by section 68 of the Bill, is correctly described as a register containing information about children who are suitable for adoption or prospective adopters, instead of being described simply as a register containing information about children who are suitable for adoption. Therefore, Convener, I hope the committee supports the amendments in my name.
Minister, no other member has indicated a wish to contribute at this stage. Do you wish to wind up, Minister?
I'll waive.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment 370 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. Can I call Amendments 371 to 379, all in the name of the Minister and all previously debated? Can I invite the Minister to move Amendments 371 to 379 on block?
Moved on block.
Thank you. Can I ask whether any member objects to a single question being put on Amendments 371 to 379? No member has objected. Therefore, the question is that Amendments 371 to 379 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. That ends today's Stage 2 consideration of the bill. At next week's meeting, we will consider amendments to the remainder of the bill. The final deadline for lodging amendments is this Thursday at noon. Can I thank the Minister and officials for attending today, and can I suspend the meeting? Excuse me, I don't want to suspend the meeting. I'll just close the meeting. Thank you very much.